Daddy, help me. Steve, where are you?
Hello, and welcome to episode 30 of Voices in the Static, a Silent Hill fan podcast. My name is Whitney, and I'm a longtime fan of Konami's survival horror series, and the owner of the fan site, SilentHillHistoricalSociety.com. Today's episode will be a continuation of my, I guess, retrospective on the Silent Hill games, with an in-depth discussion on Silent Hill 2, a game often lauded as being the pinnacle of the entire series, with several of my friends and fellow Silent Hill fans. Given how long our discussion on the original Silent Hill was in episode 29, I have a feeling we will have a lot more to discuss with the game's sequel. Before we get started, why don't you all quickly introduce yourselves?
I'm Amy from alchemilahospital.net, and I've also had, fan site and things going on for some years now.
She is an OG fan.
And I'm CJ from RelyOnHorror.com.
I am Rourke, also from RelyOnHorror.com.
At least you know this time around.
Yeah.
I am AJ, also known as the Gaming Muse, and I am a professional YouTuber that makes 90% Silent Hill videos.
And I am William. I'm also with Rely on Horror and Screaming Wave Productions.
Thank you guys so much for joining me again to talk about Silent Hill. Well, Amy's new, but everyone else came on to discuss Silent Hill 1. So before we jump into our thoughts and theories about Silent Hill 2, I thought I might first give a short run-through of the plot, just in case anyone listening who is unaware or maybe needs a refresher, and then also go over a bit about the game's development, and then we'll go hog wild on our thoughts, theories, memories, really whatever you guys want to discuss about Silent Hill 2. I will be talking quite a bit in the beginning, but if you guys have anything you want to add or interject, please feel free to jump in at any time.
James, honey, did something happen to you? After we got separated in that long hallway? Are you confusing me with someone else? You were always so forgetful. Remember that time in the hotel?
Maria?
You said you took everything, but you forgot that videotape we made. I wonder if it's still there.
How do you know about that? Aren't you Maria?
I'm not your Mary.
I didn't mean to scare you. I'm kind of lost.
Lost? So, what about Laura? We got to find her.
Players take control of James Sunderland, who received a letter from his wife Mary to meet with her in their special place in Silent Hill.
In my restless dreams, I see that town, Silent Hill. You promised you'd take me there again someday, but you never did. Well, I'm alone there now, in our special place, waiting for you.
Seems innocent enough, but what's strange is that according to James, Mary has been dead for the past 3 years. How could she even write him a letter? Knowing this, James heads into town anyway in hopes of seeing his beloved wife once again. But unfortunately, Silent Hill's changed quite a bit from his last vacation there.
This town, there's something wrong with it. It's kind of hard to explain, but...
Is it dangerous?
Maybe. And it's not just the fog, either.
Okay, I got it. I'll be careful.
I'm not lying.
No, I believe you. It's just... I guess I really don't care if it's dangerous or not. I'm going to town either way.
The town is abandoned, shrouded in fog, with many routes and areas of town completely closed off. And to make matters worse, it's also now infested with strange and dangerous creatures.
Is it dead? What the hell is it? It's not human.
Finding Mary in these conditions will not be an easy task. But James isn't completely alone, as he runs into several other tourists during his search. There's Angela, a suicidal teenager looking for her mother.
Oh, it's you.
Yeah, I'm James.
Angela.
Angela, okay. I don't know what you're planning, but there's always another way.
Eddie, a bullied young man who seems to be on the run from something.
It wasn't me. I didn't do it.
Do what?
I didn't do anything. I swear. It was like this when I got here.
My name's James Sunderland.
Eddie.
Laura, a bratty little girl who's also looking with Mary, with no fear of the dangerous surroundings.
You're the one who stepped on my hand.
I don't know. Maybe I did.
What's a little girl like you doing here anyway?
Huh? Are you blind or something?
What's that letter?
None of your business. You didn't love Mary anyway.
Wait! How do you know Mary's name?
But most shocking of all is the sultry Maria, a resident of Silent Hill who could be Mary's twin.
Mary? No, you're not.
Do I look like your girlfriend?
No, my late wife. I can't believe it. You could be her twin. Your face, your voice, just your hair and clothes are different.
My name is Maria. I don't look like a ghost, do I?
Throughout his search, James is also stalked by a silent and intimidating creature. Wearing a large triangle-shaped helmet that drags a very large knife and just so happens to have a penchant for killing Maria in front of James over and over again. After 2 Maria deaths,
Maria, no.
jumping down numerous holes and killing Eddie in self-defense, James rows across Toluca Lake and makes it to his and Mary's special place, room 312 in the Lakeview Hotel. Inside, he views a home movie from their previous vacation.
Are you taping again? Come on. I don't know why, but I just love it here. It's so peaceful. You know what I heard? This whole area used to be a sacred place. Please promise you'll take me again, James.
And comes to the horrible realization that Mary didn't succumb to illness 3 years ago, but that he suffocated her with a pillow shortly before coming into town himself.
She died because she was sick?
No, I killed her.
It wasn't Mary who brought him here. The letter was merely a figment of his imagination, hence why it disappears slowly throughout the game. It was James's own guilt and desire to be punished for his heinous crime that drove him to town. Armed with this truth, James confronts not one but 2 pyramid heads.
I know the truth. Now it's time to end this.
And depending on the ending the player receives, will confront either an angry Maria.
Mary?
When will you ever stop making that mistake?
Or Mary on the roof of the hotel.
James, do you really think I could ever forgive you for what you did? James.
Resulting in James either committing suicide by driving his car into the lake, resurrecting Mary with an old ritual, leaving town with Laura, leaving town with Maria, or skipping the final fight altogether to either get abducted by aliens and Harry Mason, or learn that a dog controls everything. That last ending there is totally the canon one, by the way.
Well, I do love that the UFO endings have like a canon all their own, that they interconnect with each other in a way that...
Mm-hmm. With Harry popping up each time.
Yeah, with Harry popping up, and then James is in the one for Silent Hill 3 as well, isn't he?
Yes, he is.
Peering behind a wall.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
I love that Masahiro Ito made a joke, something to the effect of the dog in the dog ending was like the face of Satan or something, and the internet went crazy trying to say, oh, is this more lore? Is this? And he had to reply and go, guys, I was kidding. It's just a dog.
No, I'm sorry. He's not Satan. He's God, because dog spelled backwards is God. Hello.
There you go.
Yeah.
Minimo's the mastermind.
I want to hear that spoken with the same like dramatic flair that in the eyes of a child, dog is God.
So that was like a quick rundown. I figured we'll take the different areas and kind of go delve a little bit deeper, but just so everyone's on the same page, that is the rough outline of the game. And before we get into theories, I again want to discuss the development of the game, because I feel it's a really important component. The difference between the first game and this one, how they changed their development and their mindset going into the sequel of Silent Hill. So Silent Hill 2 is the second installment in Konami's survival horror series, originally released on PlayStation 2 in September 2001 in North America and Japan, and November in Europe. And it was later ported to both Xbox and PC the following year. Well, technically Japan got the Xbox version in December 2001, but it was almost 2002, so I'm just lumping it in there. After the surprise success of the original Silent Hill in 1999, Konami was eager to make some more money with the sequel as soon as possible, so development on the game began that June. The team was given a very small window to settle on a platform and quickly decided on the PlayStation 2, as they were unable to gather enough information on the then unannounced Gamecube and Xbox consoles. According to Akihiro Imamura, am I saying that correctly? Silent Hill 2's producer, this decision was also influenced by a wish from the business section of Konami to move rapidly on developing for the PlayStation 2, since it was currently the market's focus. It was a hot machine at the time. I think PlayStation 2 is probably the most popular console in that generation. Yeah.
I believe it's
still one of the most popular of all time.
All time?
Yeah,
I wasn't sure if I should say that or not. I wasn't quite sure.
I think the only console that's ever beaten it is the Wii.
Really?
But I think they're both really close together in the top 1 and 2 spots of highest selling consoles of all time.
And the
PS2 is
PS2... Go ahead.
What? We're already talking over each other. Quick aside to that, the other fun fact about the PS2 is that it's one of the longest lasting consoles of all time. It released in 2001, I believe, and its final game released in 2014, which was FIFA 14.
Yeah, that was a long run.
Not accept any PS2 games because there's so many of them, they cannot handle the load. You cannot take PS2 games to GameStop.
Really? Mm-hmm. Oh, I did not realize that.
Yeah, we actually
anything else.
Yeah, back when I worked there, we ended up shipping them off to storage or something because we had so many of them. The weight of them was actually starting to crack the shelf they were on in half.
Oh my.
Yeah, 500 copies of Kingdom Hearts 1 will do that.
Oh my god.
That rich lore.
It is. I do consider the PS2 era kind of like the best for survival horror. There's such a lot of good gems on that one console. It seemed to be like the heyday of survival horror, though it seems to be making a comeback now. Nowadays.
For sure.
So
it's interesting you said that not to keep the conversation stagnant. But you said that they basically chose PS2 by like it was the one that they were the most familiar with at the time.
Yes.
It's the idea though of having Silent Hill 2 on GameCube and having both that and Resident Evil Remake come out about the same time is insane to me on one console. I mean, GameCube would have dominated horror for that generation had that been the case.
Yeah, I was really surprised when I saw that they were actually considering the GameCube because, you know, it's a Nintendo property and that wasn't typically known for its mature titles at that point in time.
Nintendo tried real hard that gen. They had Geist and the one that everyone likes, Eternal Darkness. Like that was Nintendo's push to try to make M-rated games, and then they didn't do that again for like 15 years.
Yeah, until
there's also there was an interview very, very like almost immediately after Silent Hill 1 came out where they were asked whether or not Silent Hill 2 would be on the Sega Saturn.
Oh.
And they were considering it at the time, apparently.
I did not know that. That's pretty funny. Imagine if
there were any survival horror on there. I think took mine up recently.
Sega Saturn had Resident Evil 1, and it's a horrible port.
Yeah, I think that's what I remembered about. Didn't it? But the one thing it did have wasn't the opening uncut.
It was, I believe, I think it's the only North American version that had the opening uncut, and I guess, and it had two bonus features. It was the very first iteration of the Mercenaries mode. I think it was just called Battle Mode. Where you just ran from the game's start all the way to the labs and shot shit on like a timer. And it also replaced the Hunter enemy type with a brand new enemy called the Tick, like the superhero.
Okay.
Those have never reappeared, and they are literally just reskinned Hunters anyway.
Did they look like the Tick superhero?
No, they were just Hunters, but brown.
Okay.
It's kind of like what is it in the European version of Silent Hill 1, where the gray children got replaced by something?
The demon kids were replaced by mumblers in the European and Japanese releases.
Yeah.
Due to censorship.
That's probably also why there was such a long time people thought the mumblers were the gray children. And
exactly. All right, but back to Silent Hill 2. The story was conceived by CGI director Takayoshi Sato, who based it on the 1866 Russian novel Crime and Punishment by, I'm sorry, I'm probably going to butcher this. I'm so bad with the foreign names.
Lord Dostoevsky.
There you go. Thank you, Amy. I was going to try to go through it with other individual members of the team collaborating on the actual scenario. Most of the writing was done by Hiroyuki Iwaku, the event and enemy programmer on the first game, but it was Sato who wrote the dialogue and storyline for all the women within the game. He was even responsible for filling in logical holes about the town that they had in the first game. So given the comments he made in a Core Gamer interview, I took this to mean that he was the one who fleshed out the history of the town as well. So stuff like how the tourist town used to actually be a place of execution with the Civil War prisoner camp, the blood swamp, the weird things happening in the area pre-colonization by the Europeans, basically all the weird and creepy shit that happened before the stuff with Elasa. That's how I interpreted that. Most of the original creative team from the first Silent Hill had returned to work on the sequel. However, there was one noticeable absence. Keiichiro Toyama, the director and writer of the first Silent Hill, he left Konami shortly after the launch of the first game to join Sony Interactive Entertainment Japan Studio and began work on a new horror IP called Siren, which I found very frustrating to play. I really need to go back to it and try it out.
The camera in that game is horrendous.
I've tried playing it 3 separate times, and I like the idea of it, but the actual game and the gameplay, I could never really get into.
Yeah, I actually bought it, the original version. I bought it because of him. I said, from the director of Silent Hill. So I'm like, oh, I might like this. And I popped it in. And I went, I hate this, and returned.
It's a clunky mess.
And returned it the next day. But I thought
And all the Japanese people have British accents in that one, right?
I think so. I know for sure Clock Tower 3, that's the case.
Yep.
And the remake of Fatal Frame 2 as well.
Hey, we don't question it when it's American accent. Come on.
That's true. But I think it might be fun for me to try to go back to it again and try to stream it and get really frustrated while people watch. So with Konami eager for a sequel, there was not only a bigger budget to work from, but also the amount of staff allocated this time around. The development team between Silent Hill and Silent Hill 2 tripled in size, going from a mere 15 members to 50. So Konami was really eager for this sequel. There was also a shift in how the team approached development for Silent Hill 2. With the first game, the team had been more invested in making something just horrific at first. As Sato put it in an interview with IGN back in 2001, they had designed an environment first and then retooled a story to fit it. Since Silent Hill 2 was a sequel, they already had a firm grasp on what the environments were going to be like, so the team chose to work out the entire story first before starting on any designs within the game. According to Sato, this method really helped make the town of Silent Hill a more realistic place in the end. Fun fact, when asked what kind of games influenced Silent Hill 2 in a 2001 IGN interview, Sato revealed that the team studied both Tomb Raider and Alone in the Dark on how to make 3D worlds. I can
definitely see Tomb Raider with the way the camera works.
Yeah, I never thought Tomb Raider would have a connection to Silent Hill, the Silent Hill series, so that really threw me when I read that. I was like, really? Tomb Raider? What about Tomb Raider? But yeah, camera angles. There you go. Alone in the Dark I could see, given that it's also a survival horror kind of game.
Yeah, Alone in the Dark is like the originator of fixed cameras. I don't think it actually is, but it's the one that popularized it. And then Tomb Raider has that auto lock behind Lara's back that it does. That's really similar to the way Silent Hill has that I hesitate to call it point of view camera, but
yeah, you can hit a button and it will immediately go to James's back.
Yeah.
Yeah. But thanks to working on less limited hardware, because they went from the PlayStation 1 to the PlayStation 2, there was a big step up in the graphics department between the original Silent Hill and the sequel. One cool feature besides, more realistic graphics was the ability to now show shadows of monsters and characters on the wall, and the ability to now have dispersing fog effects.
That's what blew my mind when I first got it, because I waited till Silent Hill 2 came out to buy a PS2, and that was the only game I had right then. But yeah, the fog friggin' blew my mind.
Mm-hmm. Which was ruined in the HD collection, but we will go into that later in my retrospective. That will get its own episode, guys. I have feelings about that. Okay, the team also had a new sound technology to play with, Sony's S-Force 3D sound library, which emulated surround sound from 2 speakers. With this new technology, it was possible to simulate sound coming from different directions, allowing players to determine where enemies were coming from before they even appeared on the screen. I don't think this sound technology was actually used that much. I think only 5 games actually use the sound technology. I don't know why it was dropped. Maybe they found something better later on with updates. I don't know. I don't know if you guys know.
Might have been hard to work with or expensive to work with.
Maybe. I don't know. Speaking of sounds, Akira Yamaoka, the game's sound director, actually took recordings of over 100 footsteps to avoid sound redundancy within the game. During the making of Silent Hill 2, a documentary included with the European Special Edition release of the game, he famously said that silence is also a sound. With all those footstep sounds he recorded, probably went a long way in highlighting the eerie silence featured in many areas of the game. Another difference, Sato's approach in designing characters also changed in the sequel. In the first game, he designed characters immediately in 3D, but for Silent Hill 2, he first made a bunch of concept drawings instead, many of which you could see on his online portfolio website, which I will link to in my news post for this podcast episode. They're pretty cool to look at. To help capture realistic human faces for the cinematics, Sato says his team made a bunch of quick sketches of human faces to help catch the motion, muscular, and feelings. They even went to the US to do research this time around. Sato himself moved to San Francisco in 2000, and in a December 2000 PSM interview, he said that living in America had really helped him since he hadn't had much interaction with foreigners while living in Japan. But now that he sees them every day, he didn't really know the bone structure of typical American faces, and his experiences have been adding to how he expressed the characters in the CG of the game. But that's not to say that American pop culture didn't still have a heavy influence. I mean, Maria looks a lot like Cameron Diaz, and her outfit was modeled after a similar one Christina Aguilera wore to the '99 Teen Choice Awards. Even Mary and Laura's outfits are very similar to those worn by Nick Cage's wife and daughter in the 1997 movie Con Air, which is very amusing to me for some reason.
I've always thought that Maria kind of looked like Carrie-Anne Moss from The Matrix.
Oh, you did? I always thought.
Yeah.
No, I always saw Cameron Diaz myself.
I thought Sybil kind of looked like Cameron Diaz in the first game, but Maria always, I guess, a blonde Carrie-Anne Moss.
I could see it. But like with the original Silent Hill, the CG movies within the game really hold up. Motion capture was used this time around, but all the facial animations were animated by hand.
That's so crazy, man.
Since motion capture technology at the time was only able to record the position of the skin and not muscle, it wasn't exactly accurate when it came to the smaller movements within the face. For example, when your mouth opens, the muscles on the sides of your face will tighten. It's something very noticeable when looking in a mirror, but when it wasn't something the motion capture system at the time could actually detect. So it could get real movements of body parts and whatnot really well because, that's heavy movements, but the micro movements in a person's face was really hard to capture, which is why I think we discussed this last episode, but part of the reason why the CG in Silent Hill 1 and 2 have held up so well is because they focus so much on actual animation in their facial movements. It looks very lifelike. Speaking of character designs, what's really interesting about the monster designs for the sequel is how different they are from typical monster designs. There's no monstrous claws or fangs or even eyes. Instead, Masahiro Ito, the game's art director and monster designer, decided to give more human characteristics. He wanted the player to think they were human at first, but then have that thought undermined with the creature's weird movements and probable angles for their bodies. There's a couple little anecdotal type things about the creatures I thought I'd just go through. You guys might want to add to it. I'm sure you guys know little fun facts about the creatures as well. During the making of documentary, he said that the lion figure design was actually inspired after seeing one of his coworkers wearing a hoodie with the hood up and his hands in the front pockets, listening to a Walkman and walking towards him in a cool way. And when you look at the creature and their movements, you could totally see a guy in a hoodie walking towards you.
Yeah, I could totally see that. It's cool.
And with Pyramid Head, Ito wanted to make a monster with a hidden face so it would look less human, therefore be more disturbing. His first idea was this monster with this super long cloth mask covering his head that attached to an apron via a cord. Its shape kind of reminds me of a plague doctor's mask since the cloth comes down together, kind of like a long trunk. I'm going to paste this in the chat for you guys. You can let me know what you guys think of it. So that's what it looks like. But he realized it was nothing more than a human in a mask. So he decided to give the creature a head shaped like a triangle. And to him, the triangle has right angles, acute edges, and the sharpness suggests the possibility of pain. And the triangle shape also helps explain the monster's role in the game as a punisher executioner. What's kind of hilarious, though, is that Ito tweeted last December that his boss and half of the members on the team weren't actually into Pyramid Head's design. They thought it was too strange and weird. And now this particular monster is like one of the most defining creatures of the entire series. Like, everyone knows Pyramid Head. They're like, oh, Silent Hill, Pyramid Head. In fact, I was on a podcast recently, Here's Johnny podcast, where they talked about Silent Hill 2. And one of the hosts, this was his first time playing the game. And he said, while he was playing Silent Hill 1, he kept expecting Pyramid Head to pop up because in his mind, Pyramid Head is Silent Hill. So I thought that was pretty funny that they were so against this design.
Yeah, especially considering that it's become like the only part of Silent Hill they acknowledge anymore. They stuck him in Bomberman.
Bomberman, and it was in that mobile racing, Crazy Kart Racer. That was
kart racing.
Yeah. Him and Robbie were in that one.
That was wait, he was actually in a kart game? That wasn't just a joke in Book of Memories?
Yes.
It's real. I have it on my phone.
Oh my god, that actually happened. I wasn't aware.
It's ridiculous.
Was this before or after Book of Memories?
It was before.
Oh, okay.
Mm-hmm. Way before.
And also, Masahiro Ito, he loves when people are like, give us more Pyramid Head, because then he just cries. Twitter. He's like, please stop.
He doesn't like it when people use Pyramid Head.
Yeah, he's not a fan of the later games, just, popping him in there. He's like, that's not what he is. But okay, I guess.
Well, the whole point was that he was specific to James's story, and the fact that they're shoehorning him into, Homecoming and other stuff against, Tom Hewlett didn't want him in that.
Yeah, Tom was like, no.
But they're like, oh, that's Silent Hill. People recognize it, so they threw him in there, and it kind of takes away from, his specialness in the second game.
Well, speaking of that, Lost Memories, it says that Pyramid Head takes the appearance of an executioner of times past, and it's incarnated from a part of James's subconscious that feels that he deserves punishment. On Twitter, Ito kind of discusses a little bit further. He describes Pyramid Head as a guardian to keep James on his path, through Silent Hill to confront the truth. And Maria is what represents his delusion. And this is why Pyramid Head constantly is killing Maria. He's like, nope, do not, no, stop it. He's on the path to truth and you're distracting him from this. Bitch, die.
Pyramid Head says cease.
Exactly. This is also kind of why you see him, when you do see him, he's often attacking the other monsters. Like famously in the apartment, you see him with 2 lying figures, which Ito says that he's not fucking them, but man, does it look like it.
He's just clapping.
Jay Blau has definitely stated that he is fucking them. Not in those words, but when I interviewed him, he said that Americans are far too literal with how they interpret the things, and that what his exact quote was, the sexual aspect was undeniable. But, yes. I mean, there's going to be different viewpoints on that.
I mean, after you walk into him on the Woodside apartment buildings, and then when you have to confront him again at the fire escape, you see him he's
chomping.
He's eating that monster out. I am sorry.
He's eating that ass.
Yeah.
He's tossing that salad.
I'm like, wow. Okay. But according to Ito, he's not supposed to be fucking it, but Pyramid Head does have a violent sexual energy going on with his interactions with the monsters, which then ties back to, I guess, James's frustrations with Marion not being able to have sex with her. It's kind of weird, but you could take that viewpoint.
And my frustration with fan art ever since.
Oh boy,
Stop sexualizing Pyramid Head for the love of God.
I follow Silent Hill on Tumblr and Twitter, and I always
that's good.
There's some not safe for work artwork that just pops up there where I'm like, I did not need to see that. Please, let's keep scrolling up. But
Well, it's interesting because the Woodside apartments were correct me if I'm wrong here, Whitney, but they were based on the apartments from David Lynch's Blue Velvet, right?
Well, that scene, I believe, Amy, you can speak more to this. Oh, the apartments? Okay.
The apartments, they're at a similar name. I can't remember it right now, but I can look it up.
That whole apartment section is very similar, both like with the sexual energy and, James hiding and the character
Here we are.
in the film hiding.
Yeah, actually, the stage that Isabella Rossellini sings on in Blue Velvet is like the same as Heaven's Night. And then, what's the apartment? Blue Creek Apartments is in Silent Hill 2, and it's Deep River Apartments, which looks exactly the same in Blue Velvet. And then there's the whole...
Are you talking about the actual inside or the outside?
Design of it.
The inside is based on a set of apartments in, where is it? San Fran, I believe? Yeah.
Yeah, I was going to say that, at least I had heard that the apartment buildings were based on a real set of apartments in the Bay Area from a Konami staffer when they came here to do research, because Konami of America's offices used to be across the bay from where I live, there in Redwood City, and they did a lot of research in the surrounding areas. San Bruno, California was a big area that they took a lot of reference photos. In fact, Old Neely Street used to have buildings that were copied directly from real-life buildings. And Tom Hewlett had said in, was it 2007? Like a 2007 Retronauts podcast, he said this story that the apartment buildings were based off of a real Konami staffer's apartment. They weren't really satisfied with the architecture they were seeing, and they're getting frustrated, and then the guy, I guess, who's showing them around had to pick up something in his apartment, whether it was a jacket or whatever, and they followed him there, and the next thing he knows, they're taking pictures of everything. And they're like, we love it! We love it! This is what we're looking for.
The thing that always gets me about the whole complex, is how small the hallways are. They're barely big enough for maybe two people at one time, and it's very claustrophobic. And then inside, it's the same thing, where the rooms seem like they're smaller and they're connected by real small hallways. So the whole thing is just this one big cage.
But I didn't know. I have not watched Blue Velvet, but that's something I really need.
It's so good.
I need to watch.
It's Twin Peaks, but really mad at you.
Yeah, and it's probably one of the most easy to follow David Lynch films. And also, if you ever wanted to hear the phrase "baby wants to fuck," you're set.
Also, I think Pyramid Head's intense.
My favorite thing about it is that it completely recontextualizes the Super Mario Brothers movie, because Dennis Hopper is the villain in both, and he's the scariest villain in movie history in Blue Velvet, and the biggest dork in the Mario movie, and I love it.
Then there's that whole thing, if you haven't seen it, there's the whole scene where Kyle MacLachlan's in the closet, and it's like James in the closet.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Doesn't he watch... I haven't seen the movie, but is he watching someone have sex or something from the closet?
He's watching someone get raped from the closet.
Oh, okay. I'm seeing the parallels with that scene.
And that's the start of the scene.
But we were talking about kind of the sexuality of a lot of the things that Pyramid Head would do. This kind of leads into the nurses. They're very sexualized, and ever since Silent Hill 2, for some reason, Silent Hill's become about sexy nurses when it had more to do with James and his frustrations. Ito actually said recently that it's supposed to be suggestive of Mary's hospitalization. I mean, there's nurses and she was sick. But he said that their swollen heads were a metaphor for her head under the pillow. And they shake their heads like they're struggling to shake off the vinyl covering their faces, just like Mary struggled to breathe, which is very creepy when you think about it. And there's also
an earlier one. What? Oh, sorry.
Sorry. And they also have little baby faces too, apparently at one point which you could see in the Gecko figure Comic-Con special edition. There's two different faces you could put onto the nurse. One with the red square in front of the mouth, and another one which is like this baby face under vinyl, which I don't know, it kind of indicates maybe pregnancy, or I don't know, but it was creepy. What were you going to say, Amy, about the nurses?
Saying I have a quote here from Ito from his forums from his GeoCities website, and he says, about the Silent Hill 2 bubblehead nurse. My originally planned concept for its head was a semi-liquid thing covered with a thin skin like a condom, and it bursts like a water balloon when it's shot. For the design of its uniform, I had these materials, pictures of the nurse in The Exorcist 3, Jacob's Ladder, in bondage-inspired fashion, and she wears stockings.
Well, I can. I know the nurse, definitely Lisa, Exorcist 3. She looks just like her. But yeah, sexy nurses, man.
It's so interesting.
Like, if you look at them, if you actually look at the nurses from Silent Hill 2, they aren't that sexy. They're very a woman with, ample breasts, sure. But if you look at them in Homecoming,
short skirts too. They're very short. And high heels.
Yeah, but they're not really, like, they're not that short compared to, like, what we're used to now. Like, they are right on her ass in Homecoming.
Really?
And it's just...
I'm looking at it right now, and that skirt is hiked up, like, over the thigh.
It's hiked up on the butt, isn't it? But not in the front, one of them?
It's just, it ends, like, in schools where they're, like, you have to have, like, 3 fingers or whatever to your knee? It is, like, way above that. right on the mid-thigh. It's like, whoa, that's really short.
Yes, maybe it's not as noticeable in 2 because the camera never really, like in Homecoming, the first time we see a nurse, it zooms in right on her ass, and it almost looks at her from it's both the outfit is worse and the way that they treat it is horrible. It's just ridiculous.
But I do think that the nurses in Silent Hill 2, especially when you get to the Otherworld version, are so much creepier. They're just covered in filth and stuff, and they're shiny, and it's like, you don't want to touch them. Don't want to touch those nurses. But did you guys have anything else about the creatures? I guess Abstract Daddy, that's the most, very sexual with Angela. It's a big indication that she was with an incestuous relationship with her dad, not by choice. She was raped by him. You can actually see two bodies kind of writhing on top of each other. Blah, so gross when you think about it. The cockroaches are supposed to be a tie back to Silent Hill 1. I believe it's supposed to show that Lesa's influence is still kind of there, even though Silent Hill 2 takes place afterwards.
It's quite some time after, though, isn't it?
Like 10 years, I think.
Yeah, it's supposed to be early 90s, like 93 or something. I know for sure that there was a date for the arcade game, and that was 93. So I always thought, like, Silent Hill 2 was, like, 92, 93 time period. But, again, that was stuff that was sort of retconned. Silent Hill 1, it seemed like they didn't have a time frame in mind, because there's some indications that it's supposed to be early 90s when they developed the game. But then after Silent Hill 2 and 3 is when they retconned things, because they're like, Silent Hill 3 was supposed to be 17 years after Silent Hill 1. So if you go from, it takes place in 2003, 17 years before, Silent Hill 1 is now in the 80s, and Silent Hill 2 is in the 90s type thing. But again, I guess everything's up to debate, even the timeline. So I could be wrong. I'm just going off of the top of my head here. Did you guys have anything to add about the creatures? Designs?
I don't know if I guess it wouldn't count as a creature, but out of everything in the game that disturbs me the most is the design of, I don't know what to call it, the piston room that you find.
It's very phallic.
Another clue that Angela's abuse was sexual in nature.
I'd say it's like it at least to me it felt like the first moment you're like, oh no.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
With her as a character.
Like, that whole scene is just, oh no.
Daddy! Mm-hmm. I mean, I was gonna mention this a little bit later, but this whole thing was up for debate for a number of years after the game's release. Like, people were like, no, she wasn't sexually abused. No. But I always thought, I mean, it's been confirmed by Jeremy Blaustein.
To jump back into some things we just want to confirm in Silent Hill 2, some people debate if Angela was actually sexually abused by her father.
I think that the team wanted to. You know, I think the backstory is, yes, that's the case.
Okay.
Seems pretty fucking obvious in the game.
Yeah. But again,
the way she recoils to James
has to do with censorship too, I think. You know, why it's not spelled out directly.
Yeah, I think there's
I think
only
that was also
so far.
an effect of the design too. I think Jeremy Blaustein had that whole thing with Konami. They were asking him how far he could go in the West. Is this cool? You know, can we go here? He's like, no, that's too much, but this is okay. I think a lot of it has to do with subtlety in the design and what the intent behind that was. They could have just flat out, spelled it out.
They could have just flat out said it too, but they didn't.
And I think it is subtle enough. You could argue that it's still subtle enough to where you could go, well, something's happened, but we're not quite sure what exactly. So you could go a couple ways with that. So there's something, she recoils when she sees James. Something's going on with her dad. You find these news clippings. So there's all this stuff adding up, but they still don't flat out tell you what actually happened. And I think that's great. That's sort of a contrast to something like Homecoming, where you have, boom, it's Pyramid Head, or boom, here's the shot of the nurse. So it's sort of the same material, but it's being approached in a completely different way.
I think subtlety wins out over just blatantly saying something 9 times out of 10. Just in terms of, just coming out and saying something can feel really clunky. And if Silent Hill 2 did just come out and be like, yeah, her dad raped her, I think that would lessen the impact of it than you figuring it out on your own. Even though, to me anyway, it feels really obvious. But also that when you do things subtly and you let the person experiencing the story figure it out on their own, it leaves a much greater impact because it also makes that person feel smart for figuring it out.
Yeah, this is a question I actually had for you guys. The game tackles very heavy themes, including euthanasia, incest, bullying, abuse. I've always thought that this game handled the topics really well, especially since it's vague, and it's there. There's a bunch of clues you could figure it out for yourself, but it doesn't hit you over the head with it, and I don't think it's gratuitous. Like I said before, I know it's been up to debate. Angela was raped by her father for some reason, but it's pretty obvious given Abstract Daddy and the environment you do battle with Abstract Daddy in, her reactions to James touching her, and being confirmed by Jeremy in interviews. But recently, I've been listening to other podcasts about, the Silent Hill series, about this game, and recently I've heard some say that they felt that Silent Hill 2 dropped the ball, that it should have delved deeper. The looks into these themes were too superficial, just on the surface. Didn't treat it with enough care. It felt more like, I guess, playing it nowadays, it feels more like a shock value, which I hardly disagree with because of the time that this game came out. It wouldn't, a deeper look, I don't think would have been appreciated as much. People were not ready for
it wouldn't have been able to be released, period.
I remember that Jay Blau said that specifically when I talked to him. He said sexual abuse and incest is not a subject that had been broached in video games to that point. And another quote that I just wanted to get in there from him was, Silent Hill 2 is all about the monstrous sides of people, which I think just cuts straight to it there.
Yeah, exactly. I thought it handled it very well. AJ, I know you talked a lot about this in your Angela video. I don't know if you have any other points you'd like to bring up about her character and how she was handled, but personally, I thought she was a great character, and I loved how she was handled in it.
Totally disagree with that idea. For one, I don't think I can think of a game since that game that has dealt with these issues in this way and with this amount of respect. Even today, a lot of the games that deal with heavier issues, a lot of them tend to be indie, and because of the way that you couldn't get away with saying, hey, we want to crowdfund a game about incest and rape. That wouldn't happen. And so, like, the most recent one I played, Sea of Solitude, deals with depression and family issues, but they're very genial, like people having issues with each other and getting bullied. This kind of stuff wouldn't happen today. And the fact that it definitely was the first, and even now, in some cases, like, games don't go this deep or do this well. I mean, how many games can you think of a character like Angela who suffered rape and abuse and is presented in a sympathetic light? And I can't think of any.
Realistically, I should say.
Yes, realistically.
There is one that came out a few years ago. I'm not sure. Destiny, who did the review for Lion Horde, said the depiction wasn't great. Others have said the depiction was good, so I haven't played it for myself, so I don't know. It's called The Town of Light. It's specifically about a woman who was committed to an asylum where she was a victim of sexual abuse, and I believe it's based on a true story.
Yeah, I
don't know.
played it the whole way through yet.
Yeah, I'm not sure how it does, but.
Oh, and one other thing I wanted to point out there is because there was controversy about whether she was sexually abused, was that Jay Blau had said the fact that she was sexually abused was openly discussed among Team Silent and him.
I always thought it was weird that it was up for debate, but Silent Hill fans, everything is up to debate. I have this feeling that a lot of people didn't want to see it, but what I really liked about Angela's character was she gave James shit. She reacted like I feel like a real person who suffered abuse would.
Will you hold it for me?
Sure. No problem.
If I kept it, I'm not sure what I might do. No! Oh, I'm sorry. I've been bad. Please don't.
Angela, relax.
Don't order me around.
I'm not trying to order you.
So what do you want then? Oh, I see. You're trying to be nice to me, right? I know what you're up to. It's always the same. You're only after one thing.
No, that's not true at all.
You don't have to lie. Go ahead and say it. Or you could just force me. Beat me up like he always did. You only care about yourself anyway. You disgusting pig.
Angela.
Don't touch me! You make me sick.
She's like, look, dude, you think you can save me? Fuck you. You can't.
Or maybe you think you can save me. Will you love me? Take care of me? Heal all my pain? That's what I thought.
She was technically right about him, because there's a line in the room with the monster that's her dad where she says, I bet you it was you that killed Mary.
You said your wife Mary was dead, right?
Yes. She was ill.
Liar! I know about you. You didn't want her around anymore. You probably found someone else.
That's ridiculous. I never.
And she's right. And it's that moment that James is like, no, I couldn't have. But people still today are always like, and I get a lot of feedback about the characters because I still do videos about them. And people talk about how Angela is as bad as James and Eddie for killing her dad.
No.
And that she was so bad. Yeah.
You missed it.
Yeah.
You missed
And that she was so awful to James. I'm like, you missed the point of the story.
Those woke centrists out
the
there.
things I have heard. I have stuff I will tell you guys, but we haven't gotten to it yet.
Well, speaking of who's bad in the game, I can't really fault fans because even Guy Seehee seemed to be very misinformed about who the true bad guy of Silent Hill 2 was. He left a comment saying how terrible Mary was to James.
Oh.
God.
Because she yelled at him.
Well, thank God what he says doesn't matter.
Hi guys, I figured I would just read Seehee's YouTube comment for you. So back in December, on Twitter, at Nevermind2Rest tweeted to Bob of the Great Debate fame that Guy Seehee replied to one of their comments on YouTube to say that actually Mary's the villain of Silent Hill 2 because she was mean to James. It reads as follows. Lady Naga, you just don't get it. Mary was abusive and manipulative. James was a victim. Ooh, boy. I'm not sure what video this is in reference to. His playthrough with Fungo, maybe? I don't know. But the link to the Twitter discussion about it is in the podcast news post on the site. Okay, back to the podcast.
I had a fan of the game on one of my videos tell me that James never committed a crime because Mary was already dead from the moment she was terminally ill, because apparently the terminally ill are not alive.
Okay.
And as someone who has talked a lot in my videos about my experiences with my terminally ill father, that did not fly with me.
No,
no, it doesn't fly with me. It doesn't fly with decent people.
Any decent human.
It doesn't fly with normal people.
I mean, technically, we're all terminally ill because we're all going to die at one point. We're not going to survive indefinitely.
But that means we're all already dead. Murder is not a thing.
But I guess we can. There's some other stuff, but this is a good I guess segue in talking about the other kind of central theme of how you view James as a character, because depending on the ending you get, you'll have a different feeling towards him. Either Mary will forgive you or she won't, because I know as sure as hell when you get the Maria ending, James comes off as very callous and kind of has the view of what Guy Seehee had towards Mary, that she was mean to him.
Mary?
What do you want, James?
I brought you some flowers.
Flowers? I don't want any damn flowers. Just go home already.
Mary, what are you saying?
Look, I'm disgusting. I don't deserve flowers. Between the disease and the drugs, I look like a monster. Well, what are you looking at? Get the hell out of here. Leave me alone already. I'm no use to anyone. I'll be dead soon anyway. Maybe today, maybe tomorrow. It'd be easier if they'd just kill me. Are you still here? I told you to go. Are you deaf? Don't come back. James, wait. Please don't go. Stay with me. Don't leave me alone. I didn't mean what I said. Please, James. Tell me I'll be okay. Tell me I'm not going to die. Help me.
You know, poor me, and I killed her to get...
I was gonna get laid, so it's okay.
Yeah, like, I mean, I wasn't having my sex for 3 years, and she was mean to me, and I was just tired of it.
You must have hated me. That's why you got rid of me.
It's true. I may have had some of those feelings. It was a long 3 years. I was tired.
That's why you needed this Maria person?
Which I thought was kind of interesting with the game, because when I first played it, I was following a guide. I got the leave ending. What endings did you guys get? And I want to know what your interpretations of James was as a character when you first played it, and how has it changed since then? Now, all the theorizing and discussions over the years, have your initial thoughts of James changed?
I guess I'll go first. The very first ending I ever got was Leave. And in terms of my perception of James, I definitely feel like it's changed a lot over the years. mostly because James is the villain. James is the monster of Silent Hill 2. And yet the game seems to have this kind of, especially with the endings, this weird kind of impartial judgment of him, that it leaves it up to you. That it portrays him as doing this horrible thing, but the character that you're playing as, the way he talks, the way he interacts with people, is not the person that we're being told by evidence that he is. The character that we're playing as comes off as this, kind of weirdly distracted, sleepy guy, but he seems like he's trying to do the right thing. But as more and more evidence piles on, we learn that either the person that we're being told about isn't real, or the person we're playing as isn't real.
He's an unreliable narrator.
Yeah, exactly that. He's an unreliable narrator, which is so unique for a video game. Because most video games take the tack that either we are playing a movie and we have no influence over it at all, or that we are the character and the character in the game is completely irrelevant to the story. It's
an avatar.
Yeah, but with James, because of that, disassociation almost between the story James and the player James, he ends up feeling that like a very weird, complicated character that the game is both trying to portray as sympathetic while also condemn. And I don't know, it's always left me with a really weird feeling about him because, like Guy was saying, oh, Mary was mean to him and all this stuff, is that on a surface level, just playing as James, you're left with that vibe that James is a victim. But learning more about him, learning what he's done, and especially the way that other characters interact with him, we're talking about Angela basically throwing his kindness in his face.
Or Eddie.
You think it's okay to kill people? You need help, Eddie. Don't get all holy on me, James. This town called you too. You and me are the same. We're not like other people. Don't you know that? Let's party!
You're just like me, James.
And even Laura, to an extent, where she seems to view James as just kind of a weird asshole.
Yeah, and she antagonizes him all the time. I mean, you get the feeling she's a brat, but you know what? James isn't such a great guy either.
Yeah,
she is 8. And every 8-year-old is gonna be that way. She has no guardians, no parents. She is on her own, and she's gonna do what she wants.
Yeah, and it's I find it fascinating because it both ends up being kind of like an early form of like nice guy syndrome, before that had a name.
Yeah.
That James feels that he is the hero. James feels that he's the sympathetic character, and he makes you feel that too all the way through the game, that you're seeing all the horrible things that he was put through because of his dying wife, how sad that was for him. Until you learn the truth. And even then, James seems kind of disconnected from, it makes him sad, but it really isn't the reaction he should be having.
Well, speaking of that pivotal moment, I know that at one point there was sound to that video. You could hear.
It's in the PC cut. Isn't it?
Well, no. It's hidden on the PC version. The voice, the sound was extracted, and I believe it was Fungo. He actually put it to the video. There was sound to that. You could hear Mary struggling to survive. It wasn't a peaceful thing. She did not, even though she was dying, she did not want to die at that point. Okay, I'm going to play the unreleased audio. If you're squeamish and you don't want to hear it, you would want to skip the next 30 seconds. Now. She was home visiting James, and she struggled and screamed, and it was very disturbing, and they ended up removing it because they felt it was too disturbing. Do you think if that sound was still in there, people would be as sympathetic as they are to James now without that sound?
Oh yeah, people.
No,
I have to say they will, because I have seen the people on my channel who are just determined to make James the good guy.
Would I agree?
It's interesting. Even though obviously this isn't the case, but it feels almost poetic that audio file is something hidden. That even the version of it that we're seeing in the game is still being seen through James's lens, and the reality is so much worse, and we have to find that ourselves. Obviously, that wasn't the plan, but that feels, I don't know, it feels right in a way.
Because, circling back to how, at least my own view of James, when I first played, I got the leave ending. So I was like, oh, okay, well, Mary forgave him, and now he's trying to make things right by adopting Laura, and they're off to start their new life together. I'm like, oh, maybe, he's learned his lesson. But I gotta say, over the years, replaying this game, the more I replayed it, I'm like, you know what? James would repeat the same mistake. I am really liking the Maria ending now, because I think that's what he would do. He'd be like, well, here's this new and improved Mary. I'm going to take her home. And he's going to repeat the same mistake, because you leave town with her and you see her start to cough. And he's like,
You'd better do something about that cough.
Creepy. He's going to end up killing her too. I can see him making the same mistakes. I guess my opinion of him has turned to more of the, you're going to fuck up again, dude. I don't think you've really learned your lesson. So I'm wondering if you guys kind of feel the same way, or have you taken a more pitiable view of him over the years, saying, you know what, he'll learn.
I got the leave ending when I first played the game. And honestly, I think it was a little too subtle for me the first time I played it. I didn't catch quite everything. Silent Hill 1's plot-driven, Silent Hill 2 is character-driven. And I think a lot of that stuff just kind of flew by me. I was maybe expecting a sequel more in lines of kind of the narrative structure of the first game. And I got the leave ending, and I didn't quite get everything. But in the years since I've played it, it's pretty much gotten better, and I've noticed more stuff with each playthrough. And I think initially I viewed James as sort of having to go through this trial and learning all this stuff, sort of going through hell again to come to terms with all this. But I think it's interesting because, again, the subtlety plays into this, where you have multiple different perspectives on him, right? You have the guy who did his voice have one perspective, you have Jeremy Blaustein having another, and all the different developers who have since said their piece on James.
Yeah, didn't Ito say he preferred the in water ending where he
right, and
himself?
that whole thing with Mary's body always being in the trunk and all that stuff. I think it's interesting because, again, the subtlety is giving you lots of different subjective points of view. Is James this? Is James that? I think it's a little more complicated than kind of a cut and dry thing. I like the idea that he could be this, he could be that. He's had sins in his past. He's tried to atone for them. He also has flaws that can't be overlooked. I always get into an argument with my mother about the novel Frankenstein and about how is Victor Frankenstein a sympathetic character?
Oh, I think he's the monster. I think he's a true monster.
Well, yeah, his whole thing, right, is he's trying to create life, and then when he finally gets it, it's ugly and he rejects it.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, my mom, she thinks he's the monster. I'm always like, well, yeah, but he's us too. He's human. He's flawed. And so, as much as I can identify with the monstrous aspect of rejecting something like that, I can also deeply sympathize with him too, because I think it's very easy to say James is the monster. I think that's a little easier. I think the harder part is admitting that James is also us, kind of like the whole, the monsters in Silent Hill are us kind of a thing. Because it's easy to point the finger and say, yeah, he did all this terrible crap, and which he did. I'm not arguing that point. I'm just saying it's harder for people to identify with that aspect and apply it to their own lives. Say, well, I'm not perfect either. I've done terrible shit, but it's easy to kind of put it into this, game avatar, and say, he did all this horrible shit.
What I mean is, like, I was quick to forgive him. I'm like, oh, he learned. But it just seems like the older I got and the more I replayed it, the more I saw how flawed he is as a character. And I kind of listened more to, like you guys said, the side characters and their reactions to him. I was like, you know what? I don't know if he really did kill Mary for the right reasons. I feel now in my mind, James, he did kill her because he was tired of her. And he seems more selfish, I guess, to me now when I look at the character. And I just found that really funny how my opinion went from, he learned his lesson. He did it for the right reasons. He couldn't see Mary suffer, to now 19 years later going, you know what? He wanted an easy way out. He was tired and
Well, it's a more realistic interpretation of that. In real life, it's not, just that cut and dry. There would be, it'd be more complicated than that. And the more often than not, the reasons we do things are not always for the most honorable.
Yeah, and that's why I mean, at first when Bob had brought this up when with Void Burgers, her Let's Play of Silent Hill 2, they had this section where they were talking about each of the endings, and they were talking about the Maria, and how he kept saying how he really liked the Maria ending, and this is why he thought it was canon. And at first I was like, no way, but then the more I thought about it, the more I was like, you know what, I could totally see it too. Yeah, this definitely is the canon ending for me, because
that's why he never came back.
I can see him repeating the mistake again. I don't think it really sunk in for him. So I'm wondering if, do you guys still, I guess, view his killing of Mary, do you think it was out of love and not wanting to see her suffer, or have you become jaded like me and seeing it as him going, I didn't want to deal with her anymore?
I think he's a dickhead.
Okay.
Now, the longer things go on, I think he's more of a dickhead. But then again, it's not that I think of him as different as I think as of the game is different, because I think more like, I can't remember the exact quote, but I think it was in Kurt Vonnegut's Breakfast of Champions, where he talks about how there are no heroes and no real villains in real life. Mm-hmm. So I think that's why it feels more realistic to me that everyone has flaws, and James is also very flawed.
Yeah, the only non-really flawed character I can think of in Silent Hill is probably Harry, because he just went on vacation and shit happened to him.
Well, Harry is probably the closest anyone in the series gets to being just a player avatar.
Yeah,
I think Henry is definitely one too.
Oh yeah, Henry's one too.
Henry for sure. Henry, you actually that's a better point.
You could argue that the only flaw Harry really had was in 3. Choosing to, love Cheryl as his own daughter, and then that ends up getting him killed. So,
kindness.
Yeah.
You can't ever really.
My feeling about James, I got the Leave ending first, and at the time, I didn't really have strong feelings about him. And then I got to college, and I experienced losing someone to terminal illness myself, and I actually not realizing at the time, angry at James. The very first Silent Hill symbolism video I made after my dad died was James. Mm-hmm. And people got mad about how angry and how much I talked about how James was the bad guy. And as an adult, many years later now, I'm kind of in the middle now, where I can see why I was angry, and I can see more clearly what James did was wrong. And the reason it's wrong is not because it's necessarily because it's murder. It's because it's a betrayal. Dying of terminal illness, they're going to, the hope is die peacefully in your sleep, assisted at hospice. And he took that away from her, and he wasn't strong enough to be there till the end. And I've been there. I was not strong enough to be there till the end. I left, but I did not murder. And so I guess I know exactly why James did what he did, and I know exactly why it's wrong. And I had people accusing me of hating James because I'm a SJW feminist. He killed his wife. I'm like, no, you are so off. But I feel like into that darkness, and I know why James did it, and that just makes it more wrong. I think you can still see him as a redeemable character, because you are pushed to the breaking point in that kind of situation, and especially because we don't really seem to see James and Mary didn't really seem to have a support system as far as we can tell. I mean, Frank Sunderland's a freaking weirdo.
Collecting umbilical cords.
Yes.
Oh man, he is so weird. But the thing that gets me is, okay, fine, he couldn't see his wife suffer. The method he did it, it's horrible to watch. Suffocation is, it takes a while.
It's a bad way to die.
It takes a long time to suffocate someone to death. And
it does kind of reinforce the idea that it feels like it was just a sudden thought, oh, there's this pillow here,
yeah.
you know.
But just the way he did it, and viewing in that lens, it's like, it took Mary a long time to die. And just the thoughts going through her head at that moment, like, my husband, I'm here, it's probably going to be my last visit home, I am dying, and here's my husband trying to hurry it up.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what feels so selfish.
Yep, exactly. And that's
it is.
My
that
change
is exactly.
Over the... That's why my feelings over the years, as I've grown, I mean, when I played this, I was a freshman in college, but over the last 20 years, my view of him has, I guess, soured. I am so jaded with him now. Like, I am like, his method, his attitude, the way the people are seeing him within the game, I just see him as a kind of a dick, an asshole.
Why do you think that changed for you, Whitney?
I just think I've gotten more jaded in terms of humanity, and I'm very into true crime, and the reasons people kill each other can be very, very petty in terms of, you know what, I'm tired of dealing with you. I don't want to get a divorce, so you know what? I'm going to kill you instead of going through that divorce process. It's so selfish. The selfish reasons people would kill their loved ones, their wife, their husband. So petty. And I think after all these years, hearing these stories, seeing James, I'm like, you are a petty motherfucker.
It's interesting because I do agree with what you were talking about, William, in terms of examining the character as human. Like I said, I firmly believe that James is the monster. That's James as a character. James as a storytelling device, though, I think is a fascinating doorway into what we are talking about right this moment, which is our feelings about him and how they've changed over time. Is that James as a storytelling device is kind of pointing a lens back at the player because of our multiple choices. And I think that is why we have people defending James, because they see things, they empathize with James on a certain level in a way that they can't disassociate. It's not the right word exactly, but
they can't separate themselves and their thoughts from his...
and that they feel that a condemnation of James is a condemnation of themselves.
I definitely agree.
Yep.
And that as such, and that's part of why I think Silent Hill 2 leaves such a huge mark, is even if you don't get into the game for like the symbolism and the deep thought kind of stuff with it, it's still so obviously there, and it leaves this impression of being something more than just a regular ass video game in a way that nothing else out there really does. Because it has, it's like an onion, it has layers. It has
a parfait.
I like parfaits.
That's why everybody got so pissed when Roger Ebert said that video games cannot be art.
Yeah, for sure. It's I mean, saying video games cannot be art is something that somebody that doesn't play video games would say.
I was exactly going to say that. A movie critic who's never played very much of a video game, of course he's going to... I mean, I got a little mad with that statement, but it's like a tennis player saying, video games aren't art. It's like, what do you know? I mean, how can you even say that?
But kind of going back about what you were saying about the players, putting themselves, seeing themselves in James's character. What is really fascinating about Silent Hill 2 and what it did with its endings, the game has multiple endings, but how you unlock the endings reflects back on how the players played the game. which is very, very subtle and very cool for the time. Like, the game takes into account how often you would recover your health. If you would immediately go places you would need to go to find Mary, or kind of let Maria distract you. If you would read all the depressing notes, examine certain items. And the indirect approach, this was very new at the time. Like, I know so many people got in water their first time around because I'm sure they just sort of ran through the game, not caring about their health. But it reflected on James's mindset. He went into town not caring about his life. He was going there to die, reading the depressing notes, looking at Angela's knife. I know for me, when I got the Leave ending, I was very careful with James. I didn't want him to die. I made sure to examine all the Mary-related items, like the photo, the letter. I would go to places immediately where I thought Mary would be. It reflected how I played the game. And it kind of ties back on how we're viewing James as a character now, because how you play James is kind of how you would kind of, I guess, I'm not sure if I'm being clear here.
You are being you while you're playing.
Yes.
Unless you're following a guide, you are you while you're playing the game, and you can't
the game
turn
doesn't
that
really
off.
tell you it's keeping track of it that way either, so you
Mm-hmm.
don't really know until you finish
realize.
the game.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
and it's interesting considering how subtle it is, because that is part of my favorite thing about Shattered Memories, which we'll get to when we do a show about that. But that game does exactly the same thing. It's just the difference is that it comes out and tells you, but you think that it's just one aspect of the game that's analyzing you, when it's actually the whole fucking experience is analyzing you.
Yeah, it's like, are you letting yourself die? Are you going to places you need to go? Are you being distracted by this other character?
Are you focusing in on posters of titties?
I think that was really cool, because I know a lot of games, even like earlier in that time frame, if it was a multiple ending type of thing, it was these direct actions that you had to do. You had to pick up this item. You had to say yes to this dialogue tree.
Yeah, binary choices.
Yeah. This game was, we're gonna give you tallies throughout the game, and you don't know we're watching you, but it's going to affect your ending. Which was my issue with getting the goddamn Maria ending, because apparently you're not allowed to bump into her more than 10 times. I'm sorry. She would get in the way.
She gets in the way. Also, when you walk into a room and she's just, hi. Already in the room.
That got me so many times. How'd you get in here before me?
It's like, I'm sorry, Maria, but you're in my way. I need to get by you to get through the store.
Sorry, I shot you in the head.
Basically off topic, but wouldn't that be a really great way of foreshadowing that Mary isn't real in like a Silent Hill 2 movie adaptation? That when James enters a room, she's already standing in the room as opposed to walking in behind him. That'd be a nice.
That wouldn't be very subtle, though.
Do it like once, like the way the camera.
Maybe she got by or something.
Yeah, that it leaves you be kind of like, wait, what? Yeah, no, it's a fascinating character study of a character and you yourself.
CJ, what ending did you get first?
I think it's been so long. I think Leave, but I was going to say earlier, I agree with you and AJ. But for me, it's hard to really say, whether he's a good guy, he's a bad guy. I just feel like it's overall a tragic story. There are no heroes. It's really difficult to say who's 100% a villain, because everything is just people are complex, and that kind of situation.
It's a point of view thing too.
Yeah, like that kind of situation could lead someone to, like, who's to say he was even completely, sane when he did what he did. Like at some point, there's a term Rourke used it incorrectly earlier, dissociation, where you just you lose touch with what's real at some point. And I feel like
that.
Yeah, and I mean, if someone were to fall into disassociation and not realize that they are feeling what they're feeling, they easily just zone out and go into something like that. So it's not to say James is absolved of what he did, but it's just a tragic situation. That's how I view it. Like, oh, he didn't learn. I that's horrible for him, and that's horrible for everyone involved that it got to this point.
I really agree there. I also want to kind of talk about Maria, because she is the distraction for him getting to the truth. When I first played, I found her annoying, but like James, my view of her really changed over the years. I see her more as the tragic character than James was. And
oh yeah,
I don't know, did all of you play the sub-scenario, Born from a Wish?
Yeah, that is extremely sad at the end. It's just like,
CJ,
what
you
does
played
this
that
mean?
with Monica Horgan, right?
I did.
She didn't even realize she recorded lines for that either.
Yeah, she said they basically stitched it together.
Wow.
Like, what's her name forgetting that she was in Spider-Man Homecoming?
Gwyneth Paltrow.
Yeah, I mean, I can't blame her. I can't for that.
We all wish we could forget.
But I'm always surprised, because I know it was, at first it was only on Xbox and the PC, but PlayStation did get the greatest hits with that version of the game. I specifically bought the greatest hits so I could play the sub-scenario, because I was so jealous that the Xbox players, they got this extra Silent Hill 2. And when I first played it, I was like, wow, that was really short. Not sure how I feel about it. But over the years, and my views of James changing, I found her very sympathetic, and it became very clear that she was made for James, but she still had her own thoughts and feelings, and she was scared and alone. And I felt,
at least for a time, I don't. It's hard. I guess it's debatable, because it seems like when that scenario starts, she is cognizant of who she is, and she's like, "What's going on here?"
I just want to see another human face. Do you know what's happening in this town? There's no one here. Just monsters.
Yes, I know. But so what? It has nothing to do with me. No one here means there's no one to disturb me.
You want to be alone in this insane asylum?
Yes, exactly.
And then there's this very specific scene toward the end where it seems like she loses herself for a second.
James.
Mary?
she just goes James and
like
walks
her
towards
brain
him.
turns off.
Yeah, it's just like this.
And that's part of why I feel so bad for her.
I also find it fascinating, the idea of, do you unlock it after beating the game, or is it just there on the menu from the word go?
It's there from the go.
Okay, because if I were to recommend Silent Hill 2 to somebody, I would tell them to play Born from a Wish after having already completed the main story.
Yeah.
Yes.
Both because that's the way it's designed, but I also feel that learning that about her, I like this is going to sound pretentious as fuck, but I feel like it puts a period to the end of Silent Hill 2's sentence. That it's this last piece of information that's just like, oh, yeah, okay. That
Do
it
you
really.
have any development notes about how they came up with that? Was it just sort of recycled stuff, or did the same people that did the main game do that? Do you have anything on that?
Oh no, the same people did the game. I think it was a way to add something of value to the Xbox version, because when the game first released, hold on, I have some notes here about the differences on the endings. So I know that there was, let's see,
I believe it might have been the last thing Takayoshi Sato worked on before he left, if I remember correctly.
So they were planning on doing it in the main development process.
There was no UFO ending in the original PlayStation release? The first one? The Black Label?
No.
I think you might be right about that.
Yeah.
So I know when because I played their Black Label, but it was my brother's copy. He ended up selling it back. So when I got the greatest hits, I had all the endings. And I know the PC version has all the endings, but the original release was missing UFO and dog ending, correct?
I wonder. I will have to check that because I just realized I actually have the Black Label for all of them.
Yeah, I want to say I had the Black Label in college, and I tried the UFO ending. I got the White Chrism, and it worked. I want to say.
Oh, maybe it was the dog ending. Okay, let's pause it. I'm going to look this up. 1 second.
Cute story. When I used to work at GameStop, CJ used to send me messages asking if we had gotten in a Black Label copy of Silent Hill 2 because he wanted the slipcover.
Yeah,
I never found it for you.
Did you get one, CJ?
No, I never got a Black Label.
Never? Man.
The only Silent Hill games we ever had for PlayStation was we did have a red label Silent Hill 2 and a copy of Silent Hill Origins that someone had put a cigarette out on.
Okay, I do have it here. So it was the original Black Label did not have the UFO ending or the Born from a Wish. So it wasn't until the greatest hits that version was included on the PlayStation. The director's cut and greatest hits versions. The original release did not have those two options. It was a Xbox only thing. So I guess that was just a way to make it special for Xbox, and then the re-releases put those in, UFO and Born from a Witch. Which I think it's kind of strange given that UFO ending is sort of a Silent Hill staple at this point, and to think that the first version released didn't have it.
It might not have been intended to be a staple, which is something I'd like to talk about more with Silent Hill 2 and things not being intended to be a staple. Yeah, and I don't mean Pyramid Head.
Buttercakes.
Buttercakes.
It's bread.
Oh God.
But yeah, I mean, it was probably just not part of their plan to have a joke ending because Silent Hill 2 is such a more kind of passion project kind of feel about it than Silent Hill 1, which is just like a scary game that's scary for the sake of being scary. But when they did, I mean, trying to add new content to the Red Label and Xbox versions, yeah, I can see why they would add it in. No, CJ, it is my wife and her friends. There's no TV on.
Sorry.
It's a rerun.
Well, kind of speaking about releases and stuff, I remember it didn't actually, Silent Hill 2 wasn't well received, which is very,
IGN's
very
original
funny.
review.
Yeah.
Because it was different,
So
yeah.
I remember PSM only giving it a 7 out of 10 rating, calling it not bad, but slightly disappointing, and said that its foremost fault was, quote, convoluted and confusing storyline, unquote, and that it was, quote, like reading a poorly written novel, unquote. The article also had a huge spoiler with the image it used. It was of the Eddie boss battle with a caption reading, friend turned foe, question mark.
Good job.
The game, yeah, the game also didn't do well in Japan either. Masahiro Ito tweeted a few months ago that the game didn't have good sales and it was often insulted on the internet because it was not a legitimate sequel to the previous one, and its direction of creature design was really different from the previous Silent Hills. Which is why we got the direct sequel to Silent Hill with Silent Hill 3. It just goes to show that Silent Hill fans have never knew what they fucking wanted since the Silent Hill 2 game. There's no pleasing everyone.
They said it was too psychological or something.
People were very disappointed.
Yeah, Silent Hill 3, I think, all of them generally succeeded financially, especially in the West. Like, they made money and generally got good reviews. 3 and
they got 7s and 8s and whatnot. It was
got like
a good game.
Yeah, and
Good
4
game.
actually, I think, was tended to be reviewed better than 2 and 3. Like, from what I've
Which
seen.
I find hilarious.
Really, Silent Hill fans that didn't like 4, critically, it did well.
Yeah.
I think probably because
we
Silent Hill
never
4,
knew what we wanted.
Silent Hill 4 is so much more video gamey than the previous 3. It's got like a life bar and the little charge up thing, and it's got like really obvious levels and stuff.
Possibly, but it also doesn't have like bosses or any. I literally just played this game this last weekend, and it really feels strange. It doesn't feel like a video game, honestly, because it doesn't have concrete endings. It feels, you know, we're used to, you go in the level, you make it through, you fight a boss, you're done, and you keep going. Like, it feels a lot more like a dream. It's very dreamlike.
And then you return to those levels to do it
Yeah,
all over again with an escort.
I was gonna say it's only half a game, but
I just find it so funny looking back on it now, how over the years Silent Hill is like the golden. Silent Hill 2 is this golden child of a game. When I lived through it, and I remember people bitching about it, saying how it wasn't what they wanted in a sequel. But now it's like all the later games are trying to recapture the spirit of Silent Hill 2. Is like lightning in a bottle, but yet at the time it wasn't appreciated. But now we appreciate it now, and I find it hilarious.
Yeah, I think we have the benefit of hindsight now. This is almost, was it 3 years till the 20th anniversary? And like I said earlier, when I played it, it kind of went over my head, and I liked it, but I didn't like it as much as 1. I felt a little wanting, so I can see people's initial reaction, missing stuff or not really delving as deeply. But we have the benefit of 15, 16 years of people pouring through it, talking to the developers, so we know all this stuff now. There are certain points that are up for debate, but back when it came out, none of this was really spelled out. You really had to play the game and look for yourself and decide for yourself. And I think it's ironic that some of the people, that maybe were born when it came out, say stuff like, modern, the new games are trying to harken back to that time. It's like, well, I was around when it came out, and I didn't quite get it either, but I still liked it. It just took time to understand, all the subtlety. And I think that's maybe what some of those early reviews were talking about. That it was a little too subtle. That knife was a little too sharp, so they didn't realize they had been cut until way later, and they realized there's deeper stuff into it that they didn't realize.
Take into mind also, they were on a deadline, and they probably only played through it once.
Right? How far did they beat it? Who knows?
Yeah, I read one interview. At least one where it was like, you did not finish the game, sir.
Yeah, well, it's interesting that you're talking about, first experiencing it, because I'm rambling on these lofty concepts about the game. I know for the first time I played it, I got nothing out of it. I was just like, this is scary. I like it. Because you mentioned that you wanted to talk about like our first experiences with it. My first experience is the lamest goddamn thing in the world. I started liking Resident Evil when I was like 10, 11 or something. I saw RE2 at a friend's house. Silent Hill 2 I played to impress a girl. There was a girl that I knew, and I really liked her, and she really liked Silent Hill, and specifically Silent Hill 2. And she was like, you should play Silent Hill 2. It's one of my favorite games. And I'm like, okay. And she took me into her bedroom to play on a little teeny tiny TV, which is the only way to experience old PS2 games. And I played up through the apartment and registered nothing about the game other than her keeping going. Oh, no, turn around and do this. Oh, wait, open that door, and then her quietly sitting there waiting for me to figure out the puzzle with the soda cans.
Orange soda.
Oh no.
Orange soda. Orange Crush. And then it was 8 or 9 years before I actually played it. It was like, oh, it is good.
It's a game.
It's more than a spooky sound effect seen through a haze of hormones.
I was a lot older when I played it the first time, so that may partially be why it really stuck out to me. I think 3 was actually my first one. I was much younger for that one.
Seeing the game as a survival horror game, I don't know if it's just me, but I feel this game isn't scary. When I play it, it's actually really relaxing compared to the others in the series. The monsters are not very threatening. You can just run by them unless you're playing on hard mode, and then they hand your butt to you, which I found out rather recently trying to play hard mode on stream.
That was an entertaining video.
Fighting the camera, I don't... He just got killed by a mannequin. Something tells me I'm gonna start over on normal difficulty. I got my butt handed to me. But whenever I play it, I feel I'm not scared. It's just very depressing. Like even the music, comparing Silent Hill 1's soundtrack. To Silent Hill 2. Silent Hill 2 is more melodic. It's calmer when you're playing through it. And I'm wondering if you guys feel, as a game, were you scared playing through Silent Hill 2, or were you like me, where it's like, okay, that's a thing, but this is a very depressing atmosphere, very low-key.
No, I wasn't afraid.
All right.
I'm like broken inside. Horror games don't really scare me, but I think the reason that 2 is less scary than the others is because the horror literally is from recognizing and realizing who these people are and what they've done or what's being done to them. So if you don't actually like think about it, fine. Like the scene in the stairway with Angela is so horrible and heartbreaking when you actually think about it and recognize what's happening there.
Thank you for saving me. But I wish you hadn't. Even Mama said it. I deserved what happened.
No, Angela, that's wrong.
No, don't pity me. I'm not worth it. James, give me back that knife.
No, I won't.
Saving it for yourself?
Me? No, I'd never kill myself. It's hot as hell in here.
You see it too. For me, it's always like this.
But otherwise, like the monsters and things, it's less horrifying and more just really fascinating to me.
Yes. I don't know. I didn't find... I mean, I'm like you. I guess I'm broken. These games don't scare me. They never have. I'm like, oh, a video game. I'm going to play through it. I'm never too scared to play one of these games or any survival horror game. But I found that this game was significantly less stressful to play than like Silent Hill 3 or 4 or 1, where there's always these monsters coming right at you. It doesn't seem like there's a moment of downtime. This game, there are stretches where you're like safe. You can explore the enemies, especially when you get out into town. You have so much room to run around them. It was a very less stressful game to play until you got down to the labyrinth and you turn around and all of a sudden Red Pyramid thing is right behind you. You're like, fuck, I didn't mean to take your knife. It was there. I thought I could. Please don't kill me.
I got really spooked out by the game. The first one terrified me. Like, the reason I'm broken is because of the first game. But the second game, it's spooky and it's tense. And I think my first playthrough, it was definitely tense for me because I try to give myself to the game, right? You go to a movie, you open yourself up, laugh, cry, whatever. Same thing with the game. I'm going to play it at night with the lights off, preferably with headphones on. and I'm going to give the game a chance. And with that one, it was definitely more of like a subtler, tense feeling. So you had that harsh industrial, kind of tension in the first one, stuff coming at you all the time. The second one, it really went with, silence as also a sound. So it was like stuff not happening was scary in this one. And yeah, you had those big open spaces, but just like with the day-night cycle kind of, or fog and night in the first game, that always scared me more because just the contrast, because when you were in those open spaces, you knew eventually that safe feeling is going to get truncated into a hallway where you can't see past your character. So they're just setting you up to knock you back down. So I guess in contrast to you, Winnie, I've always been scared on some level, and that's what I love about survival horror, is that it gets me, not just jump scares, but also tension and the story and different aspects to that. But yeah, I was pretty tense, and I remember I had this whole kick right around the same time Silent Hill 2 came out. I remember I got it on launch day. I don't know if you guys remember, there's also like a music game on PS2 called Frequency. It had a sequel called Amplitude, and then the same people who made that made Guitar Hero. So it was kind of really early on in the music video game music kind of stuff, rhythm games. And I remember I would play Silent Hill 2, and then to come down from that, I would play Frequency just so I could kind of cleanse my palate, because it was less scary than the first one, but it was still tense, and I still had to come down from that to be able to go to bed. The irony is that I've never had like a Silent Hill or a nightmare because of Silent Hill, but that's never stopped me from leaving the lights on.
Everyone talks about like the games giving them nightmares. I've never had one, and I'm like so in these games. Like
I've had good dreams about it. Does that count?
Sure.
I've had dreams where I've been in the environment, but I haven't been scared. I've had some measure of control, and they've been more like a spooky cool, like, oh, isn't that cool? Like fascinating. Like, it's fun to be here because I have some kind of power over it.
I've just had shit where I had a dream I'm bidding on something Silent Hill related.
And you lose the bid. That's the true nightmare.
A survival horror.
That's like the extent of Silent Hill influencing my dreams. Which is sad.
I do think that it is worth mentioning is we do nothing but play horror games, which is probably why we don't find them scary at all. I've never been scared by Silent Hill 2. In general, I think the only things that have ever genuinely bothered me in a like made me uncomfortable and freaked out is the mirror room from Silent Hill 3 and the Hell Descent from Shattered Memories, if that's what it's called.
No. You're talking about that's Homecoming.
The thing where you're falling indefinitely in Shattered Memories.
That big
where you see the shadow on the wall in your flashlight.
And the videos.
And the videos and stuff.
Playing.
That really got to me, and I don't really know why. But in general, I play Silent Hill, and it's part of why I don't play them often. And also part of why I like Homecoming is this, and we'll get to Homecoming, obviously. Homecoming is a very brain-dead kind of action game. And as such, I'll put on a podcast.
It's very like visceral.
It's a shooter action game. Whereas Silent Hill 2, when I play that, I feel that I have to give it 100% of my attention. And as such, it kind of puts me in like this weird dream state is the right way to put it, but like I do find it calming. I do find it this nostalgic and comforting. Something that I highly recommend, not just to the listeners, but to you guys as well. He doesn't do this sort of thing anymore, which is a shame. But there was a great YouTuber called Jordan Underneath. And he would do videos typically about how video games related to his issues with depression. And that could both be in terms of really happy games, like he did a video on Animal Crossing, or it can be scary games like Resident Evil Remake. But my favorite video of his is about Silent Hill 2. And he
Can you give me a link to the YouTuber?
I'm gonna link him right here.
Yeah, because I wanna make sure I put that in the news post.
Yeah,
I'll have to watch this. Okay.
Yeah, it's great, and he talks about how Silent Hill 2 is basically his happy place game. That when he starts feeling really depressed and out of it, he will go and play Silent Hill 2, because of the level it speaks to him on, and that it is a comforting experience to him. And I would say not on his level, but I feel sort of the same way, that it brings me to a place in my head that is calm and self-reflective. And I always appreciate the time that I have with it, even though usually years will pass in between playthroughs.
You know, it's funny because it's such a depressing game overall. I've heard people say that they can't play it because it's too depressing, and they get kind of the suicidal thoughts. It kind of triggers them in that aspect. But I can totally see it being a happy place. Like if it makes you, it gives you kind of like an outsider viewing into the game of this other person kind of going through a similar shit, you might have a better perspective on your own issues.
It ends up being kind of like that's my secret, Cap. I'm always depressed.
Yes, this is actually how I got into the Silent Hill series, and I completely understand that mindset, because there's a place, I was in high school at the time, so that's all you got to say is high school. I was at the point where trying to enjoy something that was happier or like it felt like exhausting to not be feeling the sorrow I was feeling. And so playing something that let me feel sad felt like relaxing and coming home, because I didn't have to pretend to be happy. So the way that I got into Silent Hill was basically using it as therapy to get through high school. So I can totally understand where this guy's coming from.
It's just like a neat, I never thought of it that way, you know? I guess I've heard over the years people using it as therapy before. I've heard that comment in forum posts and stuff, and that makes a lot of sense, what you guys are saying. Definitely Silent Hill 2 less, I don't know, 3 and 4, they seems more hectic.
Well, I mean, my real therapy game is Book of Memories. That game just, it speaks to me.
I can't tell if he's being serious or not. I was like, I don't want to laugh if he's being serious.
No, the 18 of us that have played Book of Memories just find it kind of fun and dopey.
One day I'll play it. I just don't own a Vita.
Well, the Vita for that also.
I bought a Vita.
Same.
I rented a Vita for it, and then I beat it, and then I returned it.
That's much smarter.
Yeah, I actually don't have a Vita anymore, but I do have a Vita TV, which is a little thing that plugs into your TV and plays Vita games. But Book of Memories is one of the games it doesn't support because it requires the touchscreen.
Good.
Yeah.
It's a failsafe. They built in a failsafe.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm gonna let you guys know the secret. I've never beat it.
You're not a true Silent Hill fan, Whitney, but we already knew that.
No, I'm not. I cannot get into the isometric Doom, like, not Doom, wait, is it Doom? Diablo. Sorry, I couldn't think of it. Like,
Hurry, delete it before Twitter comes back.
I cannot get into that gameplay, and it's like I'm playing it, and after a while I'm like, I'm so bored of this. I gotta sit down and try to play through it, because I do want to do an episode on that game, but I have not beat it.
Yeah, I mean,
I'm a terrible fan.
I've never even played it, so you're ahead of me.
Yeah, I beat it, but it took me a year playing it at work.
I actually haven't even beaten Origins. I just recently bought it and have got to play it.
What are you playing it on?
PS2.
Yeah, that game looks really bad on PS2. It's so goddamn dark.
Good.
I didn't realize how dark it was. I couldn't see anything. I played it on when it came out. I played it on PSP, and there was an option in the game to bump up the brightness a little bit so you could actually see items. Oh, there's supposed to be a health drink there? Well, I don't see it because all I can see is blackness. Oh man, that port is awful.
It also doesn't do anything to un-PSPify itself. It's still playing like it only has so many buttons. It's like you have a whole PS2 controller.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's not a very good port. Neither is the Shattered Memories game. It's a downgrade from in the looks department from the Wii. And I mean, I know the Wii looks great. I would expect the PS2 version to also look great, and it did not. It did not. But we'll get into that when we talk about Shattered Memories. We're still on Silent Hill 2 now. There were a couple like little fun facts or little observations I had. Did you guys know it only took Kari Yamaoka to compose Theme of Laura? Like 3 days. Can you believe that? 3 days. He made that awesome track.
It's ridiculous.
Yeah. And man is very talented for not being able to read or write music.
Oh, I found out Nobuo Uematsu of Final Fantasy also never had any formal musical training.
Seriously? Oh my
Holy
god.
shit. He's like the top guy.
Yeah, he
like
is.
2 of my favorite composers never went to music school.
I can't believe that.
Quick aside, actually, about music. I've always found Silent Hill 2's soundtrack fascinating. It's probably the most iconic of the series, much like the game, I would argue. Although it was before the series had started to have songs. It was before the series started to really get into the kind of rocky sound that it had after a while.
Silent Hill 3, yes, when they went to vocals.
But one of the things that I also find fascinating is that it's, unless I'm mistaken, I think it's the only Silent Hill game that doesn't have any version of the theme. That
You
doesn't
might be
have
right.
that da 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 da. Like all the other games have it, even just quoted somewhere, like a little tiny snip of it in some track. But Silent Hill 2 doesn't have it at all.
I think you're right. I don't think I've heard... Actually, while editing this podcast, I had listened to the Theme of Laura, and I heard the Silent Hill 1 refrain Rourke mentioned. We were wrong. Oops.
I don't know that 4 has it.
4 has it. 4 doesn't have that part.
It has it in Waiting for You. That track.
At the very end of...
Waiting for You, on the soundtrack.
Yeah, Waiting for You. It's not that part of the theme, but it's the opening.
Oh.
But what I found more is Akira likes to slip a little bit of Theme of Laura. Into some of his later tracks as well. You'll hear that refrain. Yeah. I'm like, oh, Theme of Laura, okay.
and I do find it interesting, and obviously this wasn't Akira's choice because he wasn't the one that composed the track, and we will get into this more, because I mean, I'm going to assume that we might do a Book of Memories episode someday.
Oh, no, we will.
And we'll talk more about it later, but I've always found it fascinating that when I think of Silent Hill 2, I think of, Theme of Laura is probably the theme of the game. But if I had like a second option, I would probably go with Love Song. And it's fascinating to me that that's the note that Silent Hill goes out on. Is the last real piece of music composed for the series is the lyric version of Love Song from Book of Memories.
I'm sorry, you don't want to take the pachinko one?
So I will get into that. The pachinko one,
we talked about it in the last episode.
Did we?
Yes.
Oh yeah, we did. The difference between a loving goodbye letter to an ex-lover and a suicide note.
Exactly. Another kind of fun fact I have here is both James and Eddie were casted by accident. Both actors had
I believe James.
Both actors had arrived with their daughters who were auditioning for Laura, and they read the roles for the heck of it. And they got them, which I thought was kind of funny. And speaking of Eddie, he's actually modeled after Akihiro Imara's, the producer's, real-life friend. Kind of reminds me of Sueri modeling Kaysen after one of his real-life friends. But apparently the friend didn't know this in both cases, and he made sure to stress that he does not have the mentality of Eddie. Just the look.
Yeah, I would...
Eddie's last name was picked by Blaustein just because he knew a Dombrowski that he hated.
That's a common name in the area. Yeah, Blaustein named a lot of that stuff around the area. It was either New York or Pennsylvania, where Brookhaven, Braintree. It was just a lot of the names of the places that he was familiar with. He would either name the town or the characters after.
We had a Brookhaven in our town.
I have a Brookhaven on the way to work, and I asked Jeremy, I was like, "This is the reason it's foggy sometimes."
What's really interesting about Blaustein is he was helping out in the game right from the ground floor. Like, he was there. They were asking him questions. He was putting input. And for some reason, a lot of fans don't really consider him a part of Team Silent when he was probably one of the members that had the most influence in terms of the names, the look, the story. He had a big influence on Silent Hill 2 because he was right there from the beginning. And it's a shame more people don't know.
Because he's not Japanese.
Yeah, I was going to say that according to Silent Hill fans, if you're not Japanese, you're the enemy.
Yeah. He was actually in some of the mocap for the game. There was a scene where I don't know why, but Guy Seehee wasn't there. And during the mocap for the scene on the stairwell, Blaustein took his place.
Yeah, he directed them. He did a lot for the game. And hearing him talk about their thought process and approaching the story and how the West would react and whatnot when we were talking about Angela and her sexual abuse, it's interesting that they went to him for a lot of it.
They wanted him to tell them what would be scary to Western audiences.
Mm-hmm. So he had a very big role in Silent Hill 2, and I wish more people knew this, that he contributed a lot to the games, more than just the localization, the translations. He was really a part of the early development of the game. In fact, CJ and we interviewed him when we visited Konami a few years ago. I did a podcast interview with him for the Silent Hill Experience podcast. It's not around anymore, but I still have the podcast up on my Historical Society site. Just hearing him talk about Silent Hill 2 and his part in it, it's really interesting. So I'm going to make sure to link that in the news post as well. But Jeremy Blaustein is most valuable player in my mind. Another...
I have a fun fact.
Oh, okay. Go for it.
So Takayoshi Sato left Konami after this because of contract issues. It's kind of like during the second game, he was allowed to make his own, I guess, studio and work from America, I believe, and ended up they didn't get Sato Works, and they didn't get paid, something to that effect. It went bad, and I think that's part of why he left. But he went from there. I don't know if he went straight away. Eventually, he ended up at a place called Virtual Heroes, which does like training videos. He worked on a training video for Hilton Hotels.
What?
Yeah. He worked on most of those games aren't available. One of them is on Steam. But the funny thing is, at least for me, Virtual Heroes is in Raleigh, North Carolina, and that is where I live. And he lived here for like 8 years.
He actually lived, like I said, he moved to San Francisco. I'm like, he was near me for a
That's how
while.
I feel. Didn't want to do
That's
more.
what that feeling was.
Because I live in Hayward, California, and it's just like they were so close yet so far. I had no idea.
Is that San Bruno? Is that where you're talking about?
Yeah, that's San Bruno is right next to San Francisco, pretty much.
Okay, cool.
I live across
He's
the bay.
got Nintendo now.
I believe so. Yeah, I think for a time he also worked at Electronic Arts.
Yeah, he did one of the James Bond games. He did the character design for, I think, GoldenEye Rogue Agent.
Which is also in Redwood City. But a lot of the games, it's funny, Konami ended up moving down south, I think just after Silent Hill 3 or whatever, the Konami America Studios, they opened up in LA. But yeah, they all used to be in my neck of the woods. Not so much.
It's funny
anymore.
with you saying that like there was issues with being paid and he eventually left Konami. What I'm getting out of this is that he was the first grain of sand in the fuck Konami movement.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, basically. Yeah.
Well, I mean, I think they all were given their treatment during Silent Hill 1.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
In case anybody was curious whether that was a new issue or not, the answer is no.
No.
I mean, he started his career at Konami working on the port for Sexy Parodius. He was the only artist assigned to the team, and he was working 15-hour days. What?
Konami, you sucked from the beginning. What are some of your guys' theories? I mean, or what are some of the more off-the-wall theories people have had over the game, over the years, do you guys think?
Should talk about Laura, because it frustrates me how many people outright hate this 8-year-old child for behaving like a child.
Yeah, Laura, okay. This is my own view about Laura and her role in the game. Yes, she's a little kid, she's annoying. One, I believe she's real, because she's there to kind of throw a wrench in James's own narrative. She's important because she gives us a heads up that his whole Mary died 3 years ago is complete bullshit. Because one, she knew Mary. She has a letter from Mary saying happy birthday, and she just turned 8 last week.
I was friends with Mary. We met at the hospital. It was last year.
You liar! Laura,
Fine, don't believe me.
But last year, Mary was already... I'm sorry, Laura. Anyway, let's go.
But she said it in her letter.
What letter?
Wanna read it?
If things had worked out differently, I was hoping to adopt you. Happy 8th birthday, Laura. Your friend forever, Mary.
Laura, how old are you?
I turned 8 last week.
So, Mary couldn't have died 3 years ago.
And that's supposed to clue you in that, hey, you know what? James is lying to us before the big reveal type thing. I'm surprised at how many fans take the theory that she's not a real person. I thought it was pretty clear that she was, but I'm wondering your guys' thoughts. Did you
What's the argument against that?
actually can say, because I've come to that side of the argument. I was requested on Patreon to do a video about Laura, and I was researching her, and I was like, this is kind of interesting. Because if you look at the way that the team has written and created all these characters, they're very deliberate about creating a certain identity for them, except for Maria and Laura. Because Eddie, James, and Angela all have last names. They have places they came from, family members named, mentioned, and Laura doesn't. And somebody told me, like, oh, she's an orphan. She does. Orphans have last names.
I
They
thought
have to
her last
legally
name-
have last names.
I thought Laura's last name. No, maybe I'm thinking of Angela.
Doesn't have one.
Yeah, she doesn't have a last
there's
name.
Just her background is really vague. Her details are a little off. Like, I'm not saying she can't be real. I've just kind of come to the side where I think it's interesting to imagine her as being maybe a memory of someone who did exist in the hospital with Mary, but not the exact person, just because there's so much about her that's foggy. Specifically, the fact that Maria and Laura are the only characters that are like that.
I remember the arguments, well, not arguments, but the discussions about her character early on. The most pressing issue people had with her character was, one, how did an 8-year-old get to Silent Hill? And two, why wasn't she seeing the same shit everyone else was? Well, we can say that she wasn't seeing the town like everyone else was because she was an innocent. She had no baggage for Silent Hill to morph and show the dark side. And she's an 8-year-old girl. About how she got there, I thought it was assumed that Eddie took her there or something, right?
Novelization says that it was Eddie.
Oh,
Am I
okay.
crazy? Am I misremembering something? Because I recall the story always being that Silent Hill is a real place that actually exists, and it is not a ghost town. People live there. It's just not the booming tourist town it used to be. The fog world is where James is. The other world is even worse than that. And Laura's in the real world, but can see James because of their attachment to Mary.
Correct. That's how I interpreted it. But like I said, everything's up to debate. Some people for some reason, don't believe Silent Hill is an actual living, breathing town. They just think it's abandoned. But yes, I
guess
agree with you.
Maybe the movie portrays it that way.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
Well, I guess yeah.
Go for a vacation in it if there's nothing there. You know?
But the movie at least does the whole other world thing.
I love the that piece of art somebody did of a Silent Hill travel brochure. Come to rescue your daughter. Stay, because you're trapped in an existential nightmare world.
The things that people have brought up in the past about Laura not being real, I'm not really like her getting to town and not seeing the ghosts and stuff. That's whatever. That's not really. I agree with you that I think that's kind of silly, but I think there's enough questions around her character that I like the idea that she and Maria aren't real, because it almost lets Maria have a happy ending. Because if she still exists there, well, at least now Laura also exists here, and maybe they can like have their happy ending where Maria gets to have Laura as her daughter the way she kind of imagined, you know?
So if Laura is in that scenario, she's not real, what is her function? To test James the way Maria is?
She represents innocence. Like, you see very much, she kind of is a placeholder for us. She's always separated from James by bars and walls and doors, and running from him. It's kind of the first sign that there's something wrong with him. Though people don't see it this way. They're always like, she's such a bitch, I hate her. I made a video about Laura and immediately like 5 comment, I hate her. Like, God. It's like, she's 8. Calm down. But yeah.
She kicked the key though.
Yeah.
She called him a fart face.
Want me to open it? Huh? Do ya? What's the magic word?
Laura?
Okay, I guess I won't open it. I think I'll just leave you like this.
You snotty little brat! Open up!
Why, you...
Laura?
You hurt me!
That was really hurtful.
Seriously.
No, but to go with there's something off about Laura. One thing about Maria, though, Laura is being seen by Eddie, Maria
That's true.
is not seen by anybody else. She even makes a point not to be seen in front of the other characters.
I'll wait here. I hate bowling.
I didn't come here to play, you know.
Hurry back, okay?
Did you find the lady you're looking for? What's her name? Mary?
So I always interpreted that as that was another thing that kind of set Maria apart from the other characters, while Laura interacted with Eddie, interacted with James.
Bye-bye.
Wait! Come back! Eddie, let's go after her.
Huh? Laura? But why?
Laura. Is that her name?
That's what she said.
I don't know if we don't know if she
she never sees Angela.
So that was another point in my favor for her being a real person, was the fact that she interacted with others, unlike Maria, who was just there for James. But I've also seen the argument where people are like, Maria was so concerned about Laura.
So, what about Laura? Did you find her?
Yeah, but she ran away.
We've got to find her.
You really seem to care about her. Do you know her?
I've never met her before. I just feel sorry for her. She's all alone. And for some reason, I feel like it's up to me to protect her.
Why? What's with this concern? Is she a part of Maria or part of Mary being reincarnated into this Silent Hill world? And my answer to that was, the reason why Maria cared so much about Laura, even though she didn't know her, is because she got sort of Mary's memories, and her memories included interacting with Laura in the hospital. But I'm for Laura being a real person, but I guess I can see her not, for the other side of her not being a real person too.
Anyone want to go tweet at Ito?
Tweet at Ito? Oh God, leave him alone. Please leave him alone.
Little girl real or not? Please answer.
Oh God,
no. The whole time.
Oh, poor Ito. He can't joke about the game. He can't say anything without everybody going, oh, canon confirmation.
Hashtag confirmed.
Poor guy. But yeah, but that's another thing about the series and their characters is, I mean, you can make that argument. Are they real or not, really, for any of them? I mean...
Pretty true.
And you can support both sides, which is interesting, because you don't necessarily, again, it's that subtlety. You don't get a hard no or a hard yes either way.
Silent Hill presents the idea with Maria. Maria's kind of what really, well, Lisa too, kind of invites the idea that if Silent Hill can create people, can we really trust anyone is real? And it makes the game a lot more interesting.
Mm-hmm. Like,
for sure.
I think I remember on Silent Hill Forum, someone was making the argument that Eddie, Angela, and Laura were all like different aspects of James's personality, just personified. I can't really get into it because I cannot remember the.
Remember seeing that?
Like what?
Like the ID.
Yes.
Dissociative identity disorder.
So they were making that argument. I think that's a valid interpretation, because the game's so vague. But it is interesting how differently people see these characters. Like, I'm immediately, yeah, she's a real kid. Other people are like, wait a minute. No. She could be fake.
I think all three of those characters reflect those attributes of James. They're sounding boards for James. I don't necessarily think they're literal representations of that.
I mean, I do think it's definitely possible that, I think that odds are good that Eddie, Angela, and Laura are all real people, but we are again seeing them through James's lens. And who knows how much of that lens is corrupting what we're seeing. And yeah, I think that I don't think that they're, alternate personalities or something like that, but they are reflections of James in certain ways that, the damaged, hurt part of James with Angela, although Angela obviously has a lot more reason to feel that way, but Eddie also kind of represents the kind of arrogant asshole part of James, and then the complete innocence of Laura, who seems to mostly be kind of baffled at all the adults around her. And meanwhile, we're left with James, who almost doesn't really have much of a personality. Other than what we are slowly informed of throughout the game. I mean, James from the start is sad, and there isn't a whole hell of a lot there at first, and he is informed more as we meet the other characters.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I think the idea of them being a soundboard, and especially narratively, they are such, regardless of what they are within the context of the lore itself.
I guess this kind of goes into, what do you believe? There's not a lot we know about Eddie. We know he's running from something. He shot a dog, shot somebody in the knee, a football player.
He killed a football coach or something.
He shot a football player in the knee. At least we know that much.
Do you know what it does to you, James? When you're hated, picked on, spit on, just because of the way you look? After you've been laughed at your whole friggin' life? That's why I ran away after I killed the dog. Ran away like a scared little girl. Yeah, I killed that dog. It was fun. It tried to chew its own guts out. Finally died all curled up in a ball. Then he came after me. I shot him too, right in the leg. He cried more than the dog! He's gonna have a hard time playing football on what's left of that knee.
I read, please take this with a grain of salt. I was on the site unseen64.net. It's about beta, canceled, and unseen video games. And there's this section on Silent Hill 2. And they said that an anonymous developer who worked on the game had shared some little tidbits about what the game originally had. So, for example, in the very early prototype, instead of Maria dying at the hospital, she was to die at the prison, and there was a part where James would jump down the hole, and Maria was to be impaled on a spike, but they removed that scene because they didn't think it fit the lore. One thing I thought was interesting was his comments about Eddie. So it says here, in an early prototype, we have a very different Eddie scene in the apartment. James was to walk into the apartment, witness Eddie murder a man, then drag the body to the fridge, beat the dead body, and scream at him. And then afterwards, he'd run into the bathroom and puke, and that's when you have your first meeting with him. With that in mind, it could be total bullshit. I'll say that right now. It's anonymous. We don't know. It could be bullshit. But with that in mind...
Ito has said that Eddie did not kill anybody.
He did? Okay.
A tweet right here, 1 second. Okay, so Tortoise on Tour asks Ito's...
that's Bob,
Twitter,
by the way.
Did Eddie kill anyone... kill that person in the fridge, or did he just open it and a body fell out? And Ito says Eddie hasn't killed anybody, and that's all I know about that.
Kind of how I always felt. Like we see him around dead bodies, but I feel like we've almost caught him right before he could make the step to being a total murdering monster.
Mm-hmm.
Like we almost put him down before he can do that.
But this is my own interpretation, I guess, because I always got the feeling that when Eddie got to Silent Hill, he was seeing people make fun of him and call him names, and Silent Hill gave him the opportunity to take his revenge out. So whenever we ran into him, he was always surrounded by these dead bodies, and I always kind of interpreted that as he shot them. And we got up to that point in the prison where we fall down the hole, and he's there with the gun, and he goes,
"Killing a person ain't no big deal. Just put the gun to their head. Pow. You killed him? But it wasn't my fault. He made me do it."
Calm down, Eddie. tell me what happened.
That guy, he had it coming. I didn't do anything. He just came after me.
And there's this person slumped over on the table in the cafeteria with their head blown out. And I always interpreted like, oh shit, he did it. He's finally started to kill people that he's seeing in the town. And we kind of got a premonition of that kind of happening to James later on, because in that painting in the room, you see that character slumped over, but he's wearing now James's jacket, green jacket and jeans. The color changes from the browns to James's outfit in
James
that
is
painting.
the dead bodies all over town too. Just like TV body and the dead bodies, the clothes sort of are the ones all over outside.
But the fact that we actually see his outfit on that painting and Eddie running out of the room, I always thought like, oh shit, he's really losing it, that character. And then of course when we run into him with after the labyrinth and the hanging meat and all that, you see all those dead bodies like piled up in the gun while he's shooting at James. He tries to kill James. I always thought that was an indication of kind of what he was seeing in Silent Hill, and I'm wondering what your guys' interpretations of what Eddie's Silent Hill was for him, because we saw Angela's was fire and whatnot.
He's thinking about killing people, but I'm just not sure if he's done it.
You're not sure if
until he tries to kill James.
Okay.
Or maybe he's materialized these things as the end result of what he wants, but he hasn't actually done that middle step. Like we see him talking about it with the gun. We see the body on the table, but we don't actually see the act itself. That's why that making of thing where he's killing someone and dragging them to the refrigerator, that might be like a first draft of an idea, but even that seems way too over for anything that they'd actually put into something like Silent Hill.
That's why I'm like, I think that this might be bullshit, because it seems a little bit too over the top, especially
it seems like a
for
director's cut
introduction.
version of someone who didn't work on the game. They're like, well, no, that's way too loud for something like this story.
Yeah, I always kind of got from Eddie, and especially the idea of what his other world would be, is like you're saying, we know that he killed a dog, we know that he injured somebody, and we see him at the very beginning, he's very defensive. I didn't kill nobody, and he's throwing up in the toilet and everything. And a running theme with Eddie is he's constantly surrounded by death. We see the body in the refrigerator, we see the corpse laid out over the table, and when we have his boss fight, we're surrounded by meat that's been designed to look like hanging bodies.
Meat wearing like little kilts for some reason.
Yeah.
It looks like Francis Bacon's paintings, which is directly what influenced Ito.
Yeah. But yeah, I imagine that for Eddie, he's, I feel that he probably lives in fear of the idea that he could easily become a monster, become a murderer.
I think
that he might have been.
Wait, what was that, Amy?
Said I think he's haunted by these thoughts he has of revenge.
Okay.
And there's a part of him that really wants it, but there's also like the rational side that's like, no, that's horrible. Don't do that. That's awful. And he's surrounded by death all of the time, and you see him lose it over time. I mean, we start with the really super, he's almost normal. Like he starts really kind of sympathetic, puking the toilet, and the next time we see him, he's chowing down pizza.
This town is full of monsters. How can you sit there and eat pizza?
She said she was fine by herself.
And then something happens in the interim, and we get to him with the when he has the gun, and he seems almost like a different character, like he's gone nuts.
And the corpse can't laugh. From now on, if anyone makes fun of me, I'll kill him. Just like that.
Eddie, have you gone nuts?
I knew it. You too. You're just like him, James.
Hey, I didn't mean anything.
Don't bother. I understand. You've been laughing at me all along, haven't you? Ever since we first met. I'll kill you, James.
James, do not ask a crazy person if they got nuts. Oh my god, dude.
I think he was constantly inundated with death and chances to kill things. It's like James, the first opportunity he gets to kill a thing, he whacks it dead. Yeah. I mean,
that's true.
He kills it, and it's not just like, oh, it's a gameplay thing. We get a cutscene of him standing over the body, examining it,
and he kicks it. Kicks it, but he pokes at it. Is it dead?
It's dead.
Yeah.
Whereas I feel that Eddie probably hadn't killed any monsters up until that point. He had been running from them. He had been freaked out by them, and that finally he's being pushed further and further and further into confronting that part of himself. And instead of going, I have to take this and throw it away, this is not good, he instead gives into it. And I think that the boss fight with James is him going, I think I'll kill somebody today.
Kind of like a last straw moment, because the way he turned around, he's like, not you too, James. And that was the straw that broke the camel's back. And he's like, fuck, I'm going to kill you. I'm tired of people making fun of me. And you're looking at me weird. Yeah.
Yeah, in the novelization, it describes his death as while he's on the floor after James has attacked him, he sees dogs that look like the dog that he killed run up and start eating him.
Oh, wow.
Which is a clear indicator that he feels incredibly guilty, at least subconsciously. I think there is that beneath the sort of the broken psyche that realizes what he's doing is wrong, he just can't control himself anymore.
I do like the little Easter egg kind of in the dog ending of when you see the Eddie image pop up, that the dog just starts growling at him like. Moving on, with other little theories, who do you guys think is leaving the notes around town for James to read? Do you think that's like the town's way of directing James, testing him in his resolve to find Mary, kind of putting the town itself has become sentient in its way to communicate with James or with these notes? Or do you think
it could be the town itself, or it could be James, because you have the whole, James is almost creating all of this himself with the help of the power of Silent Hill.
Mm-hmm.
He's created the letter. He's used this photograph to, back up the letter.
Look at this photograph!
So when you see stuff like there's a hole in the ground, and all this stuff, it's for him. There wouldn't really be any reason for it to be there for anybody else.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, you could go either way. I think somebody else actually doing it is a little weird. So in a way, it's kind of the town or James.
Well, I think there's a mixture that there are some notes that are definitely from the town, especially the riddles. But the notes you find of the guy writing about he's there with his friend and he's done something horrible and then run away, and there's a dead body there. I think it's very possible that there are other people who have been called to the town and possibly failed or are still trapped there on some level that have written notes. And there's also notes like the Brookhaven Hospital has a series of notes that I explored in one video that seem to have been written by the hospital director, whose name I think is Lawrence, on his desk. And he seems to be the person that possibly wrote the "there was a hole here, it's gone now" thing.
That's where I was going to go to. There's theory that it might be the hospital director leaving some of these notes. And the sub-scenario with Maria, with Baldwin, also kind of makes me think that there might be other people, like ghosts, kind of taunting the people visiting the town, kind of testing them, because he knew about James. He knew James was a bad guy. Well, that's what he tried to warn Maria about.
That James, he's a bad man.
James. Yes. I know.
He's looking for the you that isn't you.
Because he's kind?
Do you know something?
Yes. Maria, you're...
Anyway, that's just what you think. You don't really know anything. That's fine.
Okay.
But he was so stuck in his own little house and whatnot. So I thought it was kind of interesting, this theory that there might be like a third party we never interact with. Either it's the town, a ghost, other people going through their own shit in the town on a different plane that you don't run into.
Yeah, that's cool too.
I thought it was, as for the hospital director, I thought it would, isn't there a Nietzsche quote they're talking about staring into the void? And I thought maybe it was just sort of an existentialism thing where there are people in the town and what is there, he's staring into himself and we don't really need anything but James.
Okay.
Yeah, this might be a little too out there, but something I've always thought about is we were talking about the Maria ending. Mm-hmm. And William, you mentioned the idea that James is leaving those notes for himself, and I think it's totally possible to see Silent Hill 2 as a closed loop, that we are seeing James going through this, incapable of letting go, forgiving himself, condemning himself, that he's incapable of moving on from this, and that this might not even be the first cycle.
Yeah, it's almost like a memento thing where he's leaving this kind of this unending mystery that he'll never be able to solve.
And not to mention the fact that you're saying that you follow the trail of notes to a body, which is James's body. All the corpses are James. Most of them.
Oh, I'm liking this.
I feel that it's almost like a BioShock Infinite kind of thing where we are seeing this never-ending cycle of James being. I mentioned before the idea of like a Silent Hill 2 movie adaptation, which will hopefully never happen, because I'm sure it would be awful. But thinking like if I were to make a Silent Hill 2 movie, I would probably end it on, James talking to Mary in her bed and her telling him that she forgives him. And that instead of accepting it, James becomes angry and decides that even what he's seeing there is the town trying to fuck with him. And that he would step out of that bedroom into a bathroom, wash his face, step out of that bathroom, back onto the highway, and say that he still hasn't found Mary, and the whole thing starts over again.
I like that interpretation as well, because I can see, like, how I mentioned earlier in the podcast how my opinion of James turned from, oh, he learned his lesson, to he's never going to really learn his lesson, he'll repeat the same mistakes. I can see him repeating the process over and over again, and the town giving him that outlet to punish himself again by having to go through the town yet again, and seeing these remnants of previous attempts on the walls and notes and whatnot. That
he never learns.
Mm-hmm. I like that interpretation. And the bodies we are seeing, the developers decided to reuse assets and make it James's body. But maybe that's a previous attempt where he failed and the town went, okay, restart, start over, try again. But we still see that dead body from that attempt. I like that. Ooh, new theory. Very cool.
I'd just like to say that real quick, just the opening, this is kind of off to the side, but I remember when they were first doing the marketing for the second game, and to this day I still think the premise of somebody going to a dead wife writes a letter and it's been 3 years, and just how that opens up, well, like what could it be, and then from that all the way to what it turns out to be, I still think that's one of the best like hooks for any kind of story, whether it's in games or movies or whatnot, that his dead wife wrote him a letter and he has to go to this town. I still think that's a great opening for a game.
Incredible.
If you like that theory, wait until we get to Silent Hill 4. I got a doozy for that one. But it's interesting that you're saying with like movies and stuff. And I don't want to get into a soapbox thing with this, because obviously, opinions are opinions. I don't like the movie Shutter Island. And I don't like it for the simple reason that it ends up feeling very cliche.
Extremely predictable movie.
It's an extremely predictable movie. Spoilers for a movie from 10 years ago. He killed his wife and he's sad about it. And and I find that
don't forget he's crazy too.
I guess.
But it's so predictable to the point where you think like it's got to be something else.
Yeah, it's got to be something else. The trailer gives it the fuck away. But the thing that I think in Shutter Island and a fuck ton of other movies do that, where it's like, and it's what I was talking about earlier with the idea of Silent Hill 2 setting a trend that it shouldn't have, is that Silent Hill 2 has this big revelation of, oh my god, James did a bad thing.
Mm-hmm.
But it does not treat it like the end of a story. All these other things treat it as this big revelation, how the story ends. It's the twist at the end. It's Jigsaw getting off the floor. It's fucking Rosebud. It's all this shit. Everything treats it that way. But in Silent Hill 2, there's
Bruce
still
Willis
like...
can talk to ghost the whole time.
Spoiler.
Snake kills Gandalf. Fucking
what?
I hope that was intentional.
It was.
Oh man!
Fucking that with Silent Hill 2, you get to that big revelation that, oh my god, James killed his wife, and there's still like 5 fucking hours. Like there's a huge chunk of that game, maybe not 5 hours, but there's a huge chunk of that game left. And
well, that's at the end though, isn't it? That's really at the hotel, and then
you're at the hotel, but isn't there still like a bunch more hotel?
There's like an hour left.
Yeah.
Okay.
There's enough to process. I think what happened.
It isn't
not
like
the immediate end.
Right.
It doesn't
There's
cut to
consequences
credits.
after that revelation.
Yeah.
Whereas,
I see what you're saying.
You know, and it's part of in Silent Hill 2. Instead of it being, it is a twist, obviously, even though the game heavily foreshadows it. And you get that feeling by the end that James did a bad thing, but it mostly ends up kind of being both a examination of James and that bad thing, as well as James overcoming, not overcoming, etc. that bad thing. And I know this is going to sound like a really pretentious, backhanded compliment. I feel that Silent Hill 2 is so good that it's been a huge detriment to survival horror games as a whole, and especially the Silent Hill series. That Silent Hill 2 has this incredible interpretation of that idea of the character that murdered his wife, that he has amnesia or whatever, and that Silent Hill 1, 2, 3, and 4 are mostly just games trying to be scary. You know, Silent Hill 3 has a twist with, oh, she's actually Harry's daughter. But that comes at like the halfway point, and even the twist is mostly just like, oh, okay. Silent Hill 4, would you call anything in that game a twist? It just kind of keeps going, and then it ends.
Well, it's not really a revelation. They're very quiet about finding out who Walter is. It's much less of a oh moment and more of a oh crap.
Yeah. But then and then they go. And this is not me saying like, oh, fuck the Western games. I like all of them. I even like Book of Memories for what it is. I'm not one of those people that like, oh, you're only allowed to like 1 through 4. But I think that a problem that the Western games have is that because Silent Hill 2 is so popular, that all of them have this, what was the bad thing your character did? What's the twist going to be?
Yeah.
They all have that template.
That was a choice too. They made that choice, both the Konami developers and other developers, to kind of chase that.
Yeah, and
I don't know that that's squarely on Silent Hill 2. I think maybe some of that success is, but
I think a lot of that is Konami being like, from my understanding, chasing the success.
Yeah, not understanding why Silent Hill 2 is successful and just looking at it from a very black and white view, very like numbers kind of view. But you end up having it kind of ending up damaging things. Like, I really like Silent Hill Origins. I don't think it's a bad game. But the horrible thing in Travis's past both has fuck all to do with the story and changes depending on what ending you get, which feels like a betrayal of that concept.
That was a problem with Downpour too.
And Downpour has the same issue. That the bad thing
that Downpour, that ending issue was a glitch or something that they didn't fix before the game went.
Right. The conditions should be opposite. Wasn't that what it was?
Yeah. And it's the other, and Downpour has it even worse, possibly, that it changes Murphy from having been a ruthless killer to that he didn't even he couldn't bring himself to kill what's his name from the Capote movie that they clearly used in the concept art. I can't remember his name.
Oh, you mean Philip Seymour Hoffman?
Yeah, he couldn't bring himself to kill Philip Seymour Hoffman. But that said, though, I do find Silent Hill Downpour to be an interesting examination of the ideas that 2 has. But Silent Hill 2, then in the indie scene, every indie game gets into that sort of thing too, and that's not a condemnation of indie games, but Silent Hill 2 set this really high bar and had this really fascinating take on a very simple concept, and I feel like it's fucking everywhere now.
Yeah,
everyone really,
and now everybody else is copying.
Everyone likes Silent Hill 2. It's like when you watch like a low budget like horror movie or something, and they have to go to the old Romero house. It's like, yes, we all like Dawn of the Dead, dude.
It's what Tolkien did to fantasy.
Yeah, it's just I feel that Silent Hill 2 is an excellent game. I think it's an important game, far and above. It's like a piece of history. It's a piece of art, and we need to move the fuck on from it.
Okay. I do want to wrap this up?
Okay, well, moving on.
We're moving on. We're trying to move on.
You said it.
I did.
You said you wanted to move
I
on.
did.
I was going off with, okay, that was my joke. You said to move on. Sorry.
Well, let's move on.
But no, I wanted to say, yes, I agree with that. And this is part of the reason why I think fans have been frustrated with the later games. This is something it's really hard to recapture because Silent Hill 2 was one of the first. Seeing it over and over again, we're never going to be satisfied because it's like, yeah, it's been done. Bruce Willis is a ghost. We get that. You know, it's old hat by this point. But it's part of the reason why I think the game has resonated for so long and why people are so interested in replaying and dissecting it. It's part of the reason why I think it's so ingrained in our consciousness is this move that they made that no one had done before.
I agree.
But before we wrap this up again, William, you wanted to touch on some of the cool things with the cam hacks, and I know Amy, you could probably...
Amy, maybe you can speak to this more. You did a series of cam hacks on a number of the games, and one of the ones was 2. Can you talk a little bit about all that stuff that you found and all the secrets and hidden rooms?
A lot of other people have found it too, but things I was using there's like the Silent Fly program that showed up on some Russian sites, and then there's other things. But yeah, some of the things people have found, I think it was Kinjit on the original Silent Hill forum that found where you can have Maria follow you throughout the game, and that's by using hacks just to get the Historical Society key and then Pyramid Head on SHF. I don't know what he's going by now, but he found that you can find that cave and garden, and also you can get to that island that you see in the Rebirth ending. You can
Yes, Toluca, the island. You found that the texture they used on the church, which you barely can even see in the ending, was a real church in Spain?
Looking for that.
One of the more recent little things I saw that John told me from the Silent 2 fan site, I got a letter. He said that...
It was Error that found that.
Error?
That texture. It's Iglesia de San Pedro in Avila, Spain.
Okay. Yeah, I was always a little bit sad that we didn't actually get to see the island. We just saw him rowing towards it. Another cool little camera hack that someone found was it room 209? The room with the butterfly, the moth's butterflies, where you have to reach your hand in and grab the key. There's these weird glowing like spots of red light, and if you look up, there's actually supposed to be like a fluorescent light with that lighting coming down. And I thought that was interesting because in the original game, you couldn't look up enough to see where this weird light was coming from.
Also, the key is inside the hole in the butterfly room. I think it was Echo Run that found that.
Yeah.
There's also a series called Boundary Break. I'm going to put the link in our chat here.
I loved that video. Yes.
Yeah, one of my favorite parts, my all-time favorite scene, kind of, is that opening shot looking over Toluca Lake, and I love that photograph. I think that's a place in England somewhere.
England, yep.
That's Derwent. It's called Derwent Water.
Right, and they've had videos and things where they'll match up the church in the background, so that's pretty cool. But what this guy does is he's done a series of videos. This is like 100 or something. He pulls back from that whole scene, so you get to see where the road goes, where it ends. It actually, the background isn't just flat; it wraps around the scene too, because of the way
it's a flat thing. I did that in the first image in my Cam Hack Silent Hill 2. Also, it's just a flat image, which is like you don't notice.
And the trees and everything. I just think that's a really cool shot.
Oh, I this isn't really a Cam Hack, but I totally forgot to mention this. Did you guys realize that when you, after the hospital and you're running back through the town at night, the place where you beat the lying figure up with the plank of wood and your way back towards the observation point at the lake are both immediately cut off. Like you see like do not cross type tape. It's closed off. It's like the town is.
Oh no! What he should do? He can't pass that.
Yeah,
I like video game logic.
The town is forcing you to continue on. You cannot go back to the car. You can't go off there. It's like Silent Hill telling James, you've gone too far now. You got to keep going forward towards the prison type of thing. I thought that was
the same
really
in
neat.
Silent Hill 1 when you try to go back before you go to the alley. The game forces you back.
Yep, the gates close. I just thought it was really cool. Little thing that they did. What?
Oh, Whitney, before you wrap up, I just wanted to mention just a little shout out for the Silent Hill Enhanced Edition, Silent Hill 2 Enhanced Edition. If you're looking for the best version of Silent Hill 2, that's probably it. It's a great collection of PC mods that bring the game up to snuff for today's standards. It looks great, adds a lot of fixes to 3D models,
They have
missing rooms.
soft
So good.
shadows now, or they're going to pretty soon.
I just played with the flashlight fix today.
I just interviewed John about that on my site also, and Leah.
Yeah, check that out because they're doing such great work and they're still going.
It's such a project of love. It's so great how fans have come together to give this game the HD kind of look it deserves. This
and
is
it
the
speaks to
HD
the lasting power of that game and its story too. That people almost 20 years later are still trying to make it look the best it can look.
I know.
I will add to that. I completely agree that that's the best way to play Silent Hill 2, because I know that I'm the only person here that will say a positive thing about it. If you have never played Silent Hill 2, and if you don't have access to a PC, the HD collection is fine.
I've said the exact same thing. Like you won't die. You won't lose out on a lot.
It is currently the only way to play Silent Hill 2 on a modern console because it's available through Xbox One backwards compatibility. The backwards compatibility version irons out some of the weird lag issues it had. I've fucked around with it, and I can't get it to do the stuttering thing it used to do, so aces. But yeah, its major issues are things that will only really bother people that are intimately familiar with the games. Other than that, it's mostly just opinion stuff. Like people are very, very divided on the voice acting. I personally prefer the voice acting. A lot don't. But I would say don't be afraid.
Definitely.
Yeah, just if it's the only way you can play it, just fucking play it, man. It's still a good game.
I always say don't, because I think it was a rushed thing, and I was very disappointed and very angry about the stuff that was fucked up in it, like the fog, the water, misplaced sounds, misplaced textures. But if that is the only way you can try the game, give it a try. I will not tell people not to play it, but I would always...
better not playing it. Yeah.
Yes. Between not playing it and playing it, play it. But I'd always recommend, if you can only do console, get the PS2 version and emulate it on your computer or play it on a PS2. That's my opinion. We will go in depth on this. I think I'm going to do an episode on the HD collection just to go over fan reactions, development, the shit they had to go through to get it out, misplaced blame, all that good stuff. That will be its own episode, but yes.
Would you want to do that in release order or after we're done with 3?
I don't know. What would you guys think? Would you think that'd be better
That
after?
might be like an extras thing, like maybe after we've covered all the the main titles, we can go back into the minutia of like re-releases and development kind of things, maybe.
Yeah, I was thinking. I mean, obviously it's your show.
No, I'm open to suggestions.
Because William's idea of having like supplemental episodes, because with that we've already talked about 2 and 3 at length, so it would mostly be a discussion of what the fuck is wrong with this game. And with things like Book of Memories, there isn't a lot to say, and the arcade, all we can really do is watch a video on YouTube.
Mm-hmm. And the pachinko as well.
Yeah.
Okay, maybe I'll do that.
Like, there just isn't much to say about those, so like supplementals could be a.
Okay, I'll think about that. But I know we're running out of time. People need to go, so I'm gonna wrap this up. I'm sure we could go on more hours, just like we did with Silent Hill 1. But please, everyone, plug your stuff. Tell people where they can find you. If you have any cool things in the works, please. Now's the time.
I actually wrote a book about Silent Hill 2. It was very personal for me because, like I've said, I did deal with some issues of terminal illness and that in my life. So I talk about the symbolism of the story, but I also tie it into real world experiences and feelings. And you can get that paperback, hardback, or multiple ebook formats on my website.
Speaking of which, my mom just poked her head in my room and handed me a package. I think it's my Silent Hill 1 book from you. I'm excited.
Hey!
Yeah.
I hope you like it.
It's great timing.
Done. I'll just say, alchemillahospital.net, and that's all I have to say. Besides, I'm working on more videos.
And also, Amy has done so much for this fandom. All the texture files, cam hacks. Man, it's amazing that you're still providing so much goodness, even after like 20 years. I remember visiting your site when it was White Claudia's Silent Hill
Angel
site?
Fire.
Yeah.
Angel Fire /games/Silent Hill.
Are you still streaming, or are you holding off on that?
I'm really busy with programming classes right now, so I'm like holding off for now.
Okay.
I definitely wouldn't be able to do a lot of my videos without a lot of the information I got from your website and Fungos and the Historical Society, for sure.
Good to hear.
Yeah, it's great.
I wouldn't lump my site in. I don't have that much in terms of items. It was mainly a blog for me to gush about.
But you have some cool like scans of articles and things.
Yeah, the original.
Yeah, that's where I'm. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
You also have tons of. Even though Whitney's selling herself short here, one of the coolest things about your site is your collection. You have stuff like Silent Hill the pen. I keep expecting like Silent Hill the soap on a rope. I mean, you have so
like
much
the baseball scene. I feel.
Yes, Silent Hill the lunchbox.
Yes,
Silent Hill the flamethrower.
Something else I want but will never have because Whitney has it.
Yeah, I mean, your collection is a marvel. I mean, half of that shit, I bet, practically doesn't exist for the most part. They're so obscure.
We otherwise wouldn't even know about. None of us.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
I mean, you're because you've been doing that that series on your Facebook page about it, and I'm always like, whoa!
Oh, you
like
mean
I can't
my
believe this
Instagram?
shit exists.
Yeah, I didn't even know that existed.
Well, you're like reposting.
There's a Silent Hill 4 mouse pad.
Yeah. Yeah.
Silent Hill 4.
Silent Hill Downpour flashlight. Is that what that was?
That was a USB pre-order item from Game Planet in Mexico. It came with a flashlight, a USB shaped as a flashlight.
Nice.
Yeah, I am the Silent Hill fan. Some Silent Hill fans do not like because I will buy anything with Silent Hill on it.
Yeah, you're not a real fan.
Well, I mean, I might not buy it, but I just might buy it if it's funny
Whitney
enough.
isn't a real fan, but she is the only one of these people that's in a goddamn World Book of Records.
Right?
Yeah, I am.
And you and CJ were also in the credits of 2 Silent Hill games.
Well, no, we were in the credits of Downpour. our names.
You were in the credits of Doppler, and then you were given a shout out in Book of Memories.
We're in a note in Book of Memories.
We are canon characters of the Silent Hill series.
Amazing.
We knew that.
Yeah.
I'm
a light side. I'm in a light side note, and CJ's in a dark side note.
Yeah, I didn't make a lot of money at my retail job.
And Twin Perfect is in the suck a dick through a straw note.
Yeah.
Which I don't think was noticed until someone else posted about it.
I know that I noticed it right away. I'm like, perfect in every... Oh my god.
Okay, more shout-outs. Or not shout-outs, plugging. What is Rely on Horror up to? Anything cool, guys, that you want to plug?
Well, CJ and I are both from Rely on Horror, and so is William. And William. I'm just used to saying CJ and I. You know, we do Haley daily horror game news, reviews, previews, interviews, and more. And right now, on Sundays, me and another editor, Kazuma, have been playing Resident Evil 5 on stream. You can come check that out. We have discovered that Chris is baby, and he needs to be babied. And also, sometime in September, even though I know I've made this claim before, I'm going to try to fucking stick to it now. I have a video coming for the release of Gears of War 5 about how, even though nobody talks about it, Gears of War is a horror game. And it always has been. And just because people think it's a dumb bro shooter doesn't mean it's not a horror series. They literally said it in its announcement in 2005.
Well, that's interesting.
Yeah, when they announced Gears of War, the original game at Xbox's E3 presser in 2005, they said, this is a new action game with survival horror design. And that's how it's always been, but people just think it's a dumb bro shooter. So I have a video coming up about that.
I have a quick thing I forgot.
Sure.
I will be at GalaxyCon next week, which is a event in Raleigh, North Carolina, where I'll be hosting a panel on the history of horror games from the 90s to early 2000s.
Ooh, is it going to be recorded?
So come join if you can. Yes, I'm going to post it on the YouTube.
Okay, cool. Because I'm like, I can't make that.
Yeah, I figured. But
And when is that, next weekend?
Next Thursday at 9:15 at GalaxyCon.
Okay.
Well, you're starting in the 90s? You don't go all the way back to Haunted House on Atari?
No, I had to cut in, I started with a very long list of things, and it ended up being 6 video game series, I think, for 45 minutes. We'll see how I do.
Good luck.
Yeah, I'm sure you're going to kick ass.
William, did you have anything you wanted to add that you're doing?
Yeah, well, I regularly write articles and press releases for Rely on Horror. I also have my own YouTube channel for Screaming Wave Productions. I have an interview with Michael Gwynn from Silent Hill 1 and some other musical stuff that he's done. Okay. So, yeah.
And for me, all that's going on right now is I am trying to raise money for Extra Life this year. It's streaming all year round. My goal is $1,000. I'm almost to $700 at this point. I'm just playing through different survival horror games, other games I like, games I've never played before. I'm currently streaming Spy Fiction, and that is a interesting game. It's one of Swery's earlier titles. I'm having fun with it. You can find me online on my personal Twitter at Kemi_Row, SilentHillHistoricalSociety.com, FKandTheCoffee.com, SilentHillCollection.com, Instagram. I've been posting, mentioned earlier. I'm doing Silent Hill collectible of the day photos and just separate little products like from my own collection, which I need to do. Almost forgot to do it today. What about you guys? Where can people find you online? Any social media things you want to plug?
Yep, just Twitter at CJ Melendez _, where I post about random things and dog pictures and pointing out all the gay shit I see in video games.
Okay.
I'm on YouTube, The Gaming Muse, and my website, gamingmuse.net.
I am at Sissel the Cat on Twitter. I am currently bitching about the new Star Trek show, Picard, because it looks like dog shit. And you can also check out my videos on the Rely on Horror YouTube page. I haven't posted a lot, but I don a leather mask and call myself Sackface, so enjoy that.
And I'm also Alchemilla Hospital 1 with the number 1 after it on YouTube.
Okay. Oh, and I guess I didn't even say my my YouTube channel is Whitney Plays, and I'm streaming on Kimiro on Twitch. But I will have all the links to that shit in the news post as per usual. Any final thoughts before I end this? No? Oh, okay. Okay, yes, I see that.
I think you meant Ramy ass, but yes. Not Ram ass.
Ram ass. I spelled it right.
That is New York's ass. I'm stealing from one of your followers.
CJ posted in the chat a screen cap from the Spider-Man game on PS4. It's a nice butt shot.
He does squats. Pro tip, do squats if you want a round butt.
Hey man, he does squats upside down. That's an even bigger benefit.
This is the kind of quality content you get if you follow him on Twitter.
Mm-hmm.
A quick question, who's the guy tied up?
I don't know.
Oh.
It was a weird mission. I don't want to spoil it.
Okay. Well, thank you everybody so much for joining me on my Silent Hill 2 discussion. I hope you guys enjoyed yourself, and I hope people listening gained some new appreciation for the game if they already didn't love it. Next time, I hope to delve into Silent Hill 3. Fun times. So, thank you everybody, and I'll speak to you all again real soon. Bye!
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Voices and Static, the podcast of the Silent Hill fan site, SilentHillHistoricalSociety.com, was recorded and edited by me, Whitney Chavis. I wanted to give thanks once again to all my guests today, and also a big shout out to Fungo. His Silent Hill media site, containing video, voice, sounds, and music clips from all the Silent Hill games, has been such a godsend over the years. And most of the game clips you heard in today's podcast was downloaded from his site over at SilentHillMedia.net. Fungo, thank you again, man, for all your hard work and great content.